Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whenever you're watching this, welcome. Let me know in the comments, what town are you watching this story from? And listen, if this story popped up for you, it's because it deserves to be heard. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more like it. The hot wind that afternoon blew strangely, as if carrying an omen. John Smith, a widowed and lonely farmer for over 8 years, was returning home on my white horse after a full day checking the fences on the northern edge of the property. Sweat ran down my face, mixing with the red dust that stuck to my skin like a second layer. The sun was beginning to hide behind the distant hills of Oklahoma, painting the sky with shades of orange and red that only the heartland knows. It was just another end to a day, like so many others I'd lived through in recent years. Ever since Mary passed, taken by a fever that even the doctors from Tulsa couldn't explain, the days dragged on the same, one after the other, without joy or meaning. Clear Creek Ranch, which I inherited from my father, was all I had left. 150 acres of good land, a herd of cattle that was lean but hardy, and a loneliness that weighed more than any burden I'd ever carried. The silence of the road was broken only by the sound of the horses' hooves against the dry earth and the distant song of some bird announcing the end of the day. It was then that I heard it. A scream that cut through the air like a razor, making my heart leap in my chest. It was a scream of despair, thin, distressed, full of pain, so unexpected in that remote place that it seemed to come from somewhere other than Earth. I pulled on the reins of Dusty, my horse, who reared up nervously. I stood still for a few seconds, trying to understand if it was real or if exhaustion was playing tricks on me. Another scream, this time clearer, more desperate. I turned the horse towards the sound and urged him to walk. Dusty resisted at first, as if he also felt that something wasn't right. I patted him on the neck. "Come on, partner, someone needs help." I followed a narrow path that cut through the low scrubland between twisted trees and dry grass. As I advanced, the scream became clearer. It was a female voice, of that I was sure. I hurried Dusty's pace, feeling a tightness in my chest that I hadn't felt in a long time. It was fear, it was urgency, it was the feeling that something important was happening. After a few minutes, I spotted in the distance a small village that I didn't even know existed in that region. It was a cluster of huts and simple cabins, surrounded by a rustic wooden palisade. Smoke rose from fires lit in the center of the place, and it was there, in the middle of that scene, that my eyes saw something I will never forget. In the center of the village, surrounded by men who looked like Native Americans from some tribe I didn't recognize, a young woman was crying and struggling, trapped inside a huge metal cauldron. Steam rose, the smell of smoke mixed with that of the dry earth, and her screams echoed like razors cutting through the air. The men, with their bodies painted red and black, chanted and stamped their feet on the ground in a rhythm of war, while some sharpened the tips of their arrows. I stood paralyzed for a few seconds, trying to understand what I was seeing. This couldn't be real. Not here, not in rural Oklahoma in the 21st century. I thought about going to Tulsa to get help, calling the police, doing anything other than going into that place alone. But another scream from the girl made me realize there was no time. I felt the blood boil in my veins. The image of Mary, my late wife, came to mind. She always said that God put me in this world to protect others, even though I never really believed it. Maybe it was time to find out if she was right. Without thinking twice, I grabbed the old rifle that I always carried attached to the saddle. I checked if it was loaded, took a deep breath, and spurred Dusty firmly. In seconds, we advanced against the village, raising a cloud of red dust. The animal neighed loudly, commanding respect as we galloped towards that macabre ritual. The men, surprised by the sudden invasion, turned towards us. Some grabbed their bows, others wielded spears. I took advantage of the element of surprise and the speed of the horse to reach the center of the village before they could react completely. Dusty knocked down 2 men with the weight of his body, clearing the way to the cauldron. I leaned in the saddle, stretched out my arm, and grabbed the girl by the wrists. She was soaked, trembling, with her eyes wide with fear and surprise. With a jerk, I managed to pull her out of that nightmare and placed her in front of the saddle between my arms. "Hold on tight," I shouted, turning the horse to get out of there. The men, recovered from the initial shock, began to shout words I didn't understand. One of them, who seemed to be the leader, pointed in our direction and gave an order. In the next instant, arrows began to whiz through the air. Holding the girl with one arm and the reins with the other hand, I made Dusty run like never before. The horse understood the urgency of the situation and responded with all his strength. I felt the wind cutting my face as the arrows passed close. One of them passed so close that it tore a thread from the brim of my hat. Another one crashed into the ground a few steps from the horse. "Duck down!" I shouted to the girl, leaning my own body forward, trying to make us a smaller target. My heart was beating like a drum inside my chest. The young woman's body, huddled and trembling, was glued to mine. She smelled of smoke, fear, and a fragility that I hadn't felt close to me in many years. Dusty ran as if he understood that our lives depended on it, raising dust and cutting through the wind, while I struggled to protect the girl from each arrow that came from behind. Only after a few miles, when we could no longer hear the shouts or the sound of feet stomping on the ground, did I slow down. I looked back, making sure we weren't being followed. The road was empty, bathed in the orange light of the late afternoon. Silence returned, broken only by the sound of the 3 of us breathing heavily, me, the girl, and Dusty. It was then that she, still trembling and crying, finally spoke. My stepfather. He left me there, said I wasn't good for anything. The words came out brokenly between sobs. He sold me to them, said they were going to purify me. I never had anyone in my life. I'm still pure, and I thought I was going to die like that. I looked at her for the first time calmly. She was young. She couldn't have been more than 20 years old. She had sunburnt brown skin, wet black hair stuck to her face, and the most frightened eyes I've ever seen. She wore simple clothes, now soaked, a cotton skirt and a torn blouse. Her wrists were marked by ropes with open wounds that would need care. I felt a lump in my throat. A mixture of anger and compassion took over me. Anger at a world that allows people to do this to other people. Compassion for that girl who, like so many others in this endless heartland, seemed not to have had a single chance in life. "What's your name, miss?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Anna Paula," she replied, still trembling. "I'm John Smith. I have a ranch a few miles from here. I'll take you there. You're safe now." She didn't answer. She just squeezed my arm tighter, as if fearing that I might disappear or worse, take her back. The sun had already set completely, and darkness was beginning to take over the road. The first stars appeared in the sky, and the wind, once hot, now brought a little of the freshness of the night. "They'll come after me," she said after a long silence. "They always come. They say I'm chosen for some ritual of theirs." I held the reins more firmly, feeling a shiver run down my spine. I didn't doubt it. Men who abandon innocence, who sell people as if they were merchandise, don't give up easily, and those from the village, whoever they were, seemed determined in their macabre purpose. "Let them come," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I really was. "My ranch is far away, and I have friends nearby. We'll take care of you first, then we'll think about the rest." As we advanced along the dark road, with only the light of the stars and a thin crescent moon to guide us, I knew I couldn't fool myself. That escape was just the beginning of something bigger, something that would change my life forever. After years living on autopilot, feeling only the weight of the days and the pain of absence, I was feeling the pulse of life again, the fear, the urgency, the responsibility for another human being. Paula settled better in the saddle, her body still trembling occasionally with contained sobs. Dusty continued at a constant pace, as if he understood the importance of taking us home safely. "Why did you help me?" she asked suddenly, her voice small against the silence of the night. "You don't even know me." The question took me by surprise. Why, after all, I could have gone my way, pretended I didn't hear the scream, arrived home and had my usual black coffee, laid in the hammock on the porch, and fallen asleep looking at the stars, as I did every night. Why risk myself for a stranger? "Because nobody deserves what they were doing to you," I finally replied, "and because I've spent too much time in this life just looking at my own navel." It was true. Since Mary died, I'd closed myself off. The ranch became my world, my prison and my refuge. The few employees I still kept barely saw me. I was like a ghost, taking care of cows and crops, existing without really living. Maybe that was it. Maybe I needed to feel that I was still capable of doing something that mattered. Or maybe it was just the basic instinct of a human being who, despite all the scars, could still recognize the pain of another. "Thank you," she murmured. And that was it. The rest of the way we made in silence. The night was clear, with thousands of stars shining in the heartland sky. Crickets sang hidden in the tall grass. From time to time, the hoot of an owl broke the monotony. The smell of dry earth now mixed with the dew that was beginning to fall, creating that unique aroma of the heartland nights. After almost 2 hours of riding, we finally saw the lights of the Clear Creek Ranch headquarters. It was a simple construction, made of wood and adobe, with a large porch in front and a corral next to it. The only light on was the one on the porch, which I always left on when I went out. As we approached, I noticed movement. Someone was there. For a moment, I tensed my body, wondering if the men from the village might have arrived before us. But I soon recognized the silhouette of Walter, the foreman who had worked with me for over 20 years. "Boss," he called, rising from the rocking chair where he had probably been dozing. "I was worried. You're never this late." He approached, the lantern he was holding illuminating his face, wrinkled by time and sun. When he saw Paula, he stopped in surprise. "Who's this girl?" "She needs help, Walter," I replied, dismounting and helping Anna to get down. Her legs faltered and she almost fell. I held her firmly by the shoulders. "Go get Zella. We need hot water, clean towels, and some dry clothes." Walter hesitated for a moment, looking at Anna with curiosity and at me with a silent question in his eyes. But he soon nodded and headed towards the back of the house, where Zella's small house was located, the only woman who worked on the ranch, responsible for the kitchen and cleaning. I guided Anna to the porch and helped her sit in a chair. Under the yellow light of the lamp, I could see her condition better. In addition to her bruised wrists, she had scratches on her arms and face. Her lips were chapped from thirst, and her eyes, although still scared, seemed more alert now. "You're safe here," I repeated, trying to calm her down. "We're going to take care of those wounds and find a place for you to sleep. Tomorrow we'll decide what to do." She nodded, looking around like a cornered animal, assessing whether she could really trust my words. I didn't blame her. Who knew what that girl had already gone through in life to get to that situation? Zella arrived hurried, still adjusting the scarf on her head, her eyes sleepy but attentive. When she saw Anna, she put her hands to her mouth. "Good heavens, girl! What happened to you?" Before Anna could answer, I intervened. "She's been through a lot, Zella. Let's take care of her first. Questions later." Zella nodded, understanding. She was a practical woman who had seen a lot of suffering in her life. With firm but gentle gestures, she began to examine Anna's wounds. "I'll prepare a hot bath and set aside some of my clothes. They'll be too big for her, but they'll do for now. And these wrists need care. I have herbs that help heal." While Zella took care of Anna, I went to the stable to leave Dusty. The horse deserved a good rest after that run. While I brushed his sweaty fur, Walter appeared at the door. "Boss, what really happened? Where did that girl come from?" I told him what had happened, trying not to omit anything. Walter knew me too well to accept half-truths. When I finished, he was silent for a while, scratching his chin covered by a sparse grey beard. "You know this could bring trouble, don't you?" he finally said. "If those men come after her—" "I know, Walter. But what did you want me to do? Leave the girl there?" He shook his head. "Of course not, boss. You did the right thing. I'm just saying we need to keep an eye out. Tomorrow I'll talk to the other hands. We'll reinforce the surveillance at the entrances to the ranch." I thanked him with a nod. That's why Walter was more than a foreman. He was almost a friend. He knew when to support me, even in the most impulsive decisions. When I returned to the house, I found Anna sitting at the kitchen table. She was clean, with her hair still damp from the bath, wearing a simple dress that must have been Zella's and that was too big for her. Her wrists were bandaged with clean cloths, and she held a mug of steaming tea between her hands. She seemed like another person, although her eyes still carried that deep fear. "She needs to eat something, John," said Zella, already stirring the wood stove. "I'm going to prepare a quick soup." Anna took a sip of the tea and looked at me over the mug. "Do you live alone here?" "Yes," I replied, sitting down at the table. "I mean, there's Walter, Zella, and 3 other ranch hands who help with the cattle and the crops. But they have their own houses on the property. Here at the main house, it's just me. And your family?" I felt that familiar pang in my chest, thinking about Mary. "My wife passed away 8 years ago. We didn't have any children." Anna lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry." "Oh, what about you? Do you have any family besides that stepfather who—" I stopped, realizing that maybe it was too soon to force her to talk about it. She shook her head no. "My mom died when I was 12. Cancer. My stepfather. He stayed with me because the judge said he had to, but he never liked me, said I was just a burden." She paused, taking a deep breath. "He skipped town from the courthouse. Then he came to live near here in Clinton. He got a job at a quarry, but he kept saying I wasn't good for anything. Clinton was a small town, about 40 miles from here. That explained why I had never heard of that village or that man before." "And how did you end up in that village?" Anna took another sip of tea before answering. "He took me. He said he'd met some Native Americans who needed a girl to—" She swallowed hard. "To be the bride of one of their spirits. I didn't really understand. I just know he got money. He left me there last night. Today they started that purification ritual." Her voice trailed off. "If you hadn't shown up—" Zella, who was listening to everything while stirring the soup, made the sign of the cross. "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, how awful! But what kind of Native Americans would these be? I've never heard of a ritual like that around these parts." It was a good question. I didn't know of any Native American tribe in the region that practiced that kind of ritual either. "And I was born and raised in these lands. They didn't seem like real Native Americans," Anna continued, as if reading my thoughts. "I mean, they were painted and everything, but they spoke English among themselves. And the cauldron, it was new, metal. It didn't seem like a Native American thing." All of this was very strange and worrying. If they weren't real Native Americans, who were those men? And what did they really intend to do with Anna? "Tomorrow I'm going to the sheriff's office in Tulsa," I decided. "I need to tell them what happened. Maybe they know something." Anna's eyes widened, startled. "No, please, don't take me to the police. They'll send me back to my stepfather, or worse, to some shelter in Oklahoma City. I've been to one before, when my mom was very sick. It's horrible." "I'm not going to turn you over to anyone," I assured her. "I just want to notify the authorities about what's happening. Those men could do this to other girls." She seemed to consider it, but she was still clearly suspicious. I didn't blame her. From what she had told me, her life had been a succession of people who had disappointed or hurt her. Zella placed a bowl of hot soup in front of her. "Eat, girl. We'll figure all this out later. John is a man of his word." If he said he's going to protect you, he will. Anna began to eat slowly, as if she had no appetite, but soon increased her pace. She was probably starving. I asked Zella to prepare a bowl for me too, and I sat down at the table with Anna. We ate in silence. The clock on the wall read almost 10 at night. Outside, the sound of crickets had increased, and from time to time we heard the distant moo of some cow in the pasture. It was a normal night at Clear Creek Ranch, except that nothing would be normal from then on. I fixed up the guest room for her, said Zella when we finished eating. It's clean and has fresh sheets. I also left some of my clothes from when I was younger. They should fit better. Thanks, Zella. You always think of everything. And are you going to keep an eye on the house tonight? She asked with a worried expression. If those men show up, I'll keep watch, I assured her. And Walter is going to alert the ranch hands. We'll have people watching the entrances to the ranch. Zella nodded, looking a little more relieved. Then okay. I'm going to my house now. If you need anything during the night, just call. After she left, I was alone with Anna in the kitchen. The girl seemed exhausted, with deep circles under her eyes. You must be tired, I said. Come on, I'll show you where you're going to sleep. I led her down the hall to the guest room, which was at the end of the hall, next to mine. It was a simple room with a single bed, an old wooden closet, and a small window that overlooked the backyard orchard. The bathroom is over there, I pointed to a door in the hallway. There are clean towels in there. If you need anything during the night, my room is next door. Anna entered the room slowly, looking around as if she didn't believe what she saw. It's been so long since I slept in a real bed, she murmured, more to herself than to me. That broke my heart. What kind of life had that girl led? Rest, I said, already turning to leave. We'll talk more tomorrow. John, she called when I was at the door. Thank you, really. You saved my life today. I swallowed hard, not knowing what to answer. In the end, I just nodded and left, closing the door behind me. I went back to the living room, grabbed the rifle that I had left leaning near the door, and checked if it was loaded. I opened the front door and went to the porch. The night was clear, with thousands of stars in the sky. Dusty was quiet in the stable, and nothing could be heard besides the normal sounds of the night in the countryside. I sat in the rocking chair, with the rifle in my lap, and my eyes fixed on the road leading to the ranch. I knew it would be a long night, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was doing something that mattered, protecting that girl from a world that had only shown her cruelty so far. And maybe, just maybe, in the process of saving her, I could also save something inside myself that had been dormant for 8 years. That part that knew how to feel beyond pain and loneliness. That part that Mary loved so much and that I had let die along with her. The cool night wind touched my face, bringing the smell of earth and weeds. On the horizon, the crescent moon shone like a promise. Tomorrow would be a new day. And for the first time in a long time, I was curious to see what it would bring. I woke up with the first crow of the rooster, as I always had for decades. For a moment, I had the feeling that everything had been just a dream. The scream on the road, the village, the escape, the girl. But then I heard movement in the kitchen and remembered that nothing had been a dream. Ana Paula was under my roof now, and with her, a whole situation that I still didn't know how to solve. I ran my hand over my face, feeling my unshaven beard and the weariness in my bones. I had slept badly, waking up at every noise, the rifle always within reach. But the night had passed without incident. I dressed quickly and went to the kitchen. To my surprise, I found Anna helping Zella prepare breakfast. She wore a simple skirt and blouse that must have been Zella's, still too big for her thin body, but fastened with a makeshift belt. Her black hair was tied in a ponytail, and her wrists were still bandaged, but she seemed more willing than the night before. "Good morning, John," said Zella, placing a mug of strong coffee on the table. The girl woke up early and wanted to help. She has a good hand for cooking. Anna looked at me, a little embarrassed. "Good morning," she said quietly. I hope you don't mind. I don't like to stand still without doing anything. Of course I don't mind, I replied, sitting down at the table. This house needed more life. It was true. Since Mary had left, meals were lonely and silent moments. Having those two women in the kitchen, the smell of fresh coffee and bread baking in the wood oven, brought a feeling that I had almost forgotten. How did you spend the night? I asked Anna, as she placed a plate of scrambled eggs with flour on the table. Well, she replied, sitting down too. It had been a long time since I slept in a real bed. There was something unsaid in that simple sentence that bothered me. What kind of life had she led? But I decided not to press. There were more urgent issues to resolve. Today I'm going to town, I announced while we ate. I need to talk to the sheriff about what happened yesterday. I saw the fear return to Anna's eyes, but I continued before she protested. Don't worry. I'm not going to turn you over to anyone. I just want to inform the authorities about that village. What they're doing is a crime, and they could hurt other girls. Anna lowered her eyes to the plate. I'm afraid of my stepfather, she confessed. If he knows I'm here, he won't know, assured Zella, sitting down with us with her own mug of coffee. And even if he did, he wouldn't get near here. John and the boys wouldn't allow it. The firmness in Zella's voice seemed to calm Anna a little. We finished breakfast talking about lighter things. The ranch, the cattle, the corn crop that I had recently started. It was strange, but good, to have a normal conversation at the table after so long eating alone, or only with Walter's silent company on days of more intense work. After coffee, I found Walter in the corral. He had gathered the other ranch hands, Little Joe, Tim and Manny, and explained the situation. Everyone agreed to be vigilant and patrol the property. If someone strange shows up, we'll let you know right away, boss, said Little Joe, the youngest of the ranch hands, no more than 25 years old, but already experienced in farm work. I thanked everyone and went to prepare Dusty for the trip to Tulsa. The city was about 2 hours away on horseback or an hour by car, but the old Jeep I had was having engine problems, and Walter had taken the parts to be repaired in town days ago. Do you want me to go with you? Offered Walter as I saddled the horse. No, I need you to stay here, I replied. Take care of the girl and keep an eye on the ranch. I don't trust those men from the village. If they were capable of doing what they were doing to her, they are capable of anything. Walter nodded, his wrinkled face serious. You can count on it, boss. No one gets in here without us knowing. Before leaving, I stopped in the kitchen to say goodbye. Ina was helping Zella prepare lunch, skillfully cutting vegetables. I'm going to town, I warned. I should be back before nightfall. Don't worry, Walter and the boys will be watching everything. She dropped the knife and came to me, her eyes worried. Are you sure it's safe to go alone? What if those men are out there? Her concern touched me. How long had it been since someone had worried about me? Don't worry. I know every inch of this region, and I carry my rifle. She nodded, still seeming insecure, but didn't insist. When I was already at the door, I heard her voice again. John, thank you for everything. I just nodded and left. Some things are hard to answer. The ride to Tulsa was quiet. The day was clear, with few clouds in the sky, and the heat was not yet intense in the early hours of the morning. The dirt road cut through farms and areas of preserved scrubland, with its twisted trees and dry grass that swayed in the breeze. From time to time, I came across some other rider or pickup trucks from neighboring farmers, and we exchanged brief waves. Dusty maintained a constant trot, without haste, but without slowness. He was a good horse, loyal and resistant like few others. We had traveled many miles together over the years, in sunny and rainy days, in good times and bad. As I rode, my mind went back to Anna Paula. Who was that girl really? What had happened in her life to get to that situation? And what would I do with her from now on? I couldn't simply keep her on the ranch forever without documents, without a legal situation. But I couldn't turn her over to authorities who might send her back to her stepfather or to some shelter either. These questions were still swirling in my head when I spotted the first outlines of Tulsa. It was a small city with about 20,000 inhabitants, which served as a commercial center for the farms in the region. It had a central square with an old church, some commercial streets, a small bus station, and few buildings with more than 2 floors. I went straight to the sheriff's office, a simple building on Main Street. I tied Dusty to a shady post, adjusted my hat, and went inside. The interior was simple: a service counter, some plastic chairs for waiting, and 2 doors that must have led to the sheriff's offices and the cells. A young officer was behind the counter, filling out some kind of form. He looked up when I approached. "Can I help you, sir?" "I need to speak to Sheriff Thompson," I said. "It's a serious matter." The boy looked at me more carefully. "You are?" "John Smith. I have a ranch about 2 hours from here in the direction of Clinton." He nodded, recognizing the name. In small towns like that, landowners were still well-known figures. "The sheriff is busy right now, Mr. Smith. There was a robbery at the hardware store last night, but I can see if he can see you next." I agreed and sat down to wait. It wasn't long before the door to the sheriff's office opened and a middle-aged fat man came out of it, whom I recognized as the owner of the hardware store. He seemed agitated and spoke loudly about security cameras and insurance. Sheriff Thompson accompanied him to the door, patting him on the shoulder and promising to do everything he could. When he saw that I was waiting, he gestured for me to enter his office. Sheriff Thompson was a man in his 50s, with short-cropped gray hair, still in shape despite his age. He had been a police officer in Oklahoma City before requesting a transfer to Tulsa about 10 years ago. He was a decent man, from what I knew, although sometimes a bit too bureaucratic. "John Smith," he greeted me, shaking my hand. "It's been a while since I've seen you around here. What brings you to the sheriff's office? Problems with trespassers on the ranch?" "Not exactly," I replied, sitting in the chair he indicated. "It's something more complicated." I told him everything that had happened the day before. The scream I heard on the road, the village I found, Anna Paula in the cauldron, the rescue and the escape. As I spoke, I saw his eyebrows rise higher and higher in astonishment. "Let me see if I understand," he said when I finished. "You're saying that there's a Native American village near your ranch where they were performing some kind of ritual with a girl against her will. Her against her will?" "Yes. But Anna doesn't think they're real Native Americans. She said they spoke English among themselves and used modern equipment." Thompson leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. "That's strange. We have no record of any Native American villages in that area, and much less of rituals like that." He looked at me more closely. "And where is the girl now?" I hesitated for a moment. I trusted Thompson, but I didn't know how he would react. "She's at my ranch." I gave her shelter. "And why didn't you bring her in to file a complaint?" "She's afraid. Her stepfather sold her to these men. She fears that if she's officially identified, he'll find out where she is, or that the authorities will send her back to him." Thompson frowned. "John, you know that sheltering a minor without notifying the authorities is a crime, don't you?" "She's not a minor," I replied quickly. "She's over 18. She just doesn't have any documents with her." The sheriff looked at me for a long moment, as if assessing whether I was telling the truth. "Even so, she needs to file a formal complaint. I can't start an investigation based solely on your account." "I know, and I'll convince her to come. But first, I wanted to know if you have any information about strange groups in the area, anything that might give us a clue as to who these men are." Thompson scratched his chin, thoughtful. "There have been some reports of disappearances in recent weeks, 2 girls from Clinton and 1 from Enid. The families filed police reports, but since they were of age and seemed to have left of their own accord, they left notes, took clothes. We didn't give the cases top priority." I felt a shiver run down my spine. "Do you think there could be a connection?" "It's possible. I'll ask the guys to review those cases more carefully." He wrote something down on a notepad. "And I'm going to send a squad car out to check out this village. Can you give me the exact location?" I described the best I could the way to the village, drawing an improvised map on Thompson's notepad. It wasn't easy, as the area was full of trails and secondary roads that didn't appear on the official maps. "If we find anything, I'll let you know," Thompson promised. "But John, I need you to bring the girl in to testify. It's the correct procedure. And she may have important information to help us identify these men." "I'll try to convince her," I promised. "Give me a few days." The sheriff didn't seem entirely satisfied, but he agreed. "3 days, John. After that, I'll have to come out to your ranch officially." I nodded, knowing it was the best deal I could get. Before leaving, I asked, "Do you know anything about a man who came from out of state to work at a quarry in Clinton, the girl's stepfather?" Thompson thought for a moment. "There are several quarries in the Clinton area. A lot of people from out of state work in them. Without a name, it's hard to identify him. Her name is Anna Paula. Maybe it will help find records of the stepfather." "I'll check," he promised. "But don't expect too much. These quarries hire a lot of people without proper documentation. They pay by the day, in cash, nothing official." I left the sheriff's office with mixed feelings. On the one hand, I was relieved to have informed the authorities. On the other, worried about what would happen when the 3 days were up. Anna would have to testify, whether she wanted to or not. I stopped at the town market to buy some groceries. I also took the opportunity to pick up some new clothes for Anna at a small clothing store on the central square. I didn't know her exact size, but the saleswoman helped me choose some basic pieces that should fit. It was almost noon when I left the city, riding Dusty. The sun was at its peak, and the heat had increased considerably. I put the purchases in the horses' saddlebags and followed the dirt road that led back to the ranch. The way back seemed longer, perhaps because I was now carrying more worries than when I had come. The information that Thompson had given me about the disappearances of other girls weighed on my mind. If there really was a connection, then the case was more serious than I had initially imagined. I was so engrossed in these thoughts that it took me a while to realize that I was being followed. It was Dusty who alerted me, becoming suddenly tense and turning his ears back. I looked over my shoulder and saw, about 200 yards behind me, an old Jeep raising dust on the road. It wouldn't be anything out of the ordinary. Vehicles passed by there all the time, if it weren't for the reduced speed with which it was coming, as if trying to keep its distance, but without losing sight of me. Instinctively, I quickened Dusty's pace. The Jeep also accelerated a little. There was no doubt they were following me. The main road continued for a few more miles before the turnoff that led to my ranch. If I continued on it, I would be taking whoever was in the Jeep directly to Anna. I made a quick decision. At the next junction, instead of following the main road, I turned right, taking a secondary road that led to a more enclosed area of scrubland. The Jeep hesitated for a moment at the junction, then turned as well. Now there was no more doubt. They were really following me. I spurred Dusty, causing him to increase his pace to a light gallop. The path was getting narrower and narrower, becoming almost a trail. Low branches forced me to lower my head, and loose stones made the horse stumble occasionally. But I knew that region well. I had grown up hunting and exploring every inch of that scrubland. The Jeep was having trouble keeping up with me on the rough terrain. I heard the engine straining on the climbs, the noise of branches hitting the bodywork. I took the opportunity to increase the distance between us. Arriving at a more open area where a seasonal stream, now dry from the summer, created a kind of natural clearing, I stopped Dusty behind a large clump of grass and got off quickly. I grabbed the rifle that I carried attached to the saddle, checked if it was loaded, and positioned myself waiting. It wasn't long before the Jeep appeared, advancing slowly along the trail. It was an old vehicle, with peeling paint and dents in the bodywork. The windows were dark, not allowing me to see who was inside. When it reached the center of the clearing, it stopped. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, the driver's door opened slowly. "Come out with your hands where I can see them," I shouted, pointing the rifle. "And no funny business!" A man got out of the vehicle, his hands raised to shoulder height. He was tall, thin, with grey hair and an unshaven beard. He wore a dirty plaid shirt and faded jeans. There was something familiar about him that I couldn't immediately identify. "Calm down, friend," he said, his voice hoarse. "I just want to talk." "Talk about what? And why were you following me?" He took a step forward, still with his hands raised. "About my stepdaughter, Anna Paula." I felt the blood run cold in my veins. It was Anna's stepfather. It had to be. How had he found me so quickly? "I don't know what you're talking about," I replied, trying to buy time. He smiled, a humorless smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I saw you leaving the sheriff's office. I heard you talking to the sheriff about a girl you rescued from a village. It wasn't hard to put the pieces together." I kept the rifle pointed at him. "So, you're the man who sold his own stepdaughter to be sacrificed in a ritual?" He grimaced, as if my words had offended him. "It wasn't supposed to be like that. They said they just wanted a girl to work in the village. Cleaning, cooking, those things. I only found out later what they really intended. I didn't believe that story for a second." His eyes, small and cold, told another version. "And what did they really intend?" He shrugged. "Who knows? These cults nowadays, they do strange things. But I didn't come here to talk about that. I came to get Anna Paula. She's my responsibility. As far as I know, she's of age. She's no one's responsibility but her own." "She has problems," he said, lowering his hand slightly. "She makes up stories, runs away from home. She needs special care." Every word he said sounded false. I remembered the marks on Anna's wrists, the terror in her eyes when I mentioned taking the case to the police. "You're going to turn around now," I said, in the firmest voice I could manage. "And you're going to leave. Anna isn't with me, and even if she was, she wouldn't go with you." His face changed, the mask of concern giving way to something harder, more real. "Look, old man, I don't want any trouble, but that girl owes me. I took care of her for years, spent money on her. If she's with you, there's a price. How much do you want for her?" The coldness with which he spoke, as if he were negotiating a head of cattle, made me nauseous. "Get out of here before I forget that I'm a man of peace," I replied, cocking the rifle to emphasize my point. He raised his hands again, but the cynical smile returned to his face. "Calm down, old man. I'm already going. But this doesn't end here. I'm going to get back what's mine." He went back to the jeep slowly, always looking at me. When he got in, he still spoke through the window. "Anna knows I have a way to find her. I always have. Tell her that." He started the engine and reversed until he found space to maneuver. Then he disappeared along the same path he had come, leaving only a cloud of dust and a feeling of unease in the air. I stood still for a few minutes, the rifle still in my hands, my heart beating hard in my chest. That encounter only confirmed what Anna had said about her stepfather. He was a dangerous man, capable of selling his own stepdaughter and then having the audacity to come looking for her, as if she were property. Even more worrying was the fact that he had found out so quickly about Anna's rescue. That meant he probably had contacts in town, maybe even at the sheriff's office. And now he knew that I was involved. I went back to Dusty, put the rifle away, and mounted. I needed to get to the ranch as soon as possible and alert everyone. Anna's stepfather might not be the only danger. If he had connections with the men in the village, they might also be looking for her. I took a different road to get back to the main road to make sure I wouldn't be followed again. It was a longer route through narrow trails and areas of denser forest, but safer. When I finally got back to the main road, it was already mid-afternoon. The sun was beginning to lose strength and a cooler breeze was blowing from the east. I hurried Dusty, who was already tired from the long journey, but responded bravely to my command. As I approached the ranch, a feeling of unease grew inside me. What if Anna's stepfather had somehow gotten there before me? What if that meeting in the scrubland had been just a distraction? I pushed those dark thoughts away and concentrated on the road. Dusty seemed to feel my urgency and maintained a steady trot despite his fatigue. Finally, I spotted the gate of Clear Creek Ranch. Everything seemed normal. Little Joe was near the entrance repairing a section of the fence. When he saw me, he waved. "Everything quiet around here, Joe?" I asked, stopping Dusty for a moment. "Everything's peaceful, John? No strangers have shown up?" I nodded, a little relieved, and headed for the main house. Arriving at the yard in front of the house, I dismounted and took the purchases out of the saddlebags. Walter came to meet me, coming out of the tool shed. "How was it in town, boss?" "Complicated," I replied. "We need to talk, but first I want to see how the girl is." I entered the house and went straight to the kitchen, where I imagined Anna would be helping Zella, but the kitchen was empty, with only the smell of food in the air indicating that someone had been there recently. "Anna! Zella!" I called, feeling a tightness in my chest. No answer. I went to the living room, then checked the rooms. Nothing. The house seemed empty. I went back to the yard, where Walter was waiting for me. "Where are the girl and Zella?" I asked, trying to control the urgency in my voice. "They went to the garden, behind the house," he replied, seeming a little surprised by my restlessness. "Zella wanted to show the girl the herbs she grows there." "Did something happen, boss?" I took a deep breath, relieved. "Yes, something happened, Walter. I met Anna's stepfather on the road, coming back from town." Walter's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" I told him about the encounter in the scrubland, about the man's threats, and my concern that he might try something against the ranch or against Anna. "I'm going to warn the boys to redouble their vigilance," said Walter, already turning to go. "And maybe it's good for the girl not to leave the house for now." "Yes, talk to them. I'm going to look for Anna and Zella in the garden." I went around the house and followed a small stone path that led to Zella's garden. It was a space surrounded by a low fence to prevent chickens and other animals from entering, with well-kept beds of vegetables, legumes, and medicinal herbs. In the center, there was a small shaded area with a rustic bench made of logs. It was there that I found the two of them. Zella was showing Anna different herbs, explaining their medicinal uses. Anna was listening attentively, helping to pick some leaves that Zella indicated. For a moment, I just stood there watching the scene. There was something so simple and beautiful about that moment. Two women taking care of the earth, sharing knowledge, the afternoon sun filtering through the leaves of the trees, that I hesitated to interrupt them, but I needed to warn them about what had happened. "Zella, Anna," I called, approaching. The two turned around. Anna smiled when she saw me, a genuine smile that lit up her face in a way that I hadn't seen before. But soon her smile disappeared, replaced by an expression of concern. "What's wrong, John? You seem worried." I looked at Zella, hesitant. "I need to talk to Anna, in private if possible." Zella nodded, understanding. "I'm going to finish lunch. You must be hungry after this morning." She put the herbs she had picked in a small basket and walked away, leaving us alone. Anna looked at me, expectant and worried. "What happened in town? Is the police coming to get me?" "It's not that," I replied, indicating the bench for us to sit down. "I spoke to the sheriff, explained the situation. He wants you to testify, but he gave us a few days." She nodded, relieved, but still tense. "Then what was it?" I took a deep breath before continuing. "On the way back from town, I met your stepfather." Anna's face paled instantly. Her eyes widened with fear, and she grabbed my arm tightly. He knows I'm here? He suspects. He saw me leaving the sheriff's office and overheard part of my conversation with the sheriff. He followed me down the road, but I managed to lose him." Anna got up from the bench, agitated. "I have to leave, now. He'll find me, I know he will." I got up too and held her shoulders firmly, but without hurting her. "Anna, look at me. You're not going anywhere. You're safe here. Walter and the boys are alert. No one's going to enter this ranch without us knowing." She shook her head, tears starting to run down her face. "You don't know him. He always finds me, no matter where I go. It's like he can sniff me out, like a dog. "This time it'll be different," I insisted. "You're not alone anymore." She looked at me, her wet eyes shining with a mixture of fear and hope. "Why are you doing this for me? Taking such a risk? You don't even know me that well?" It was a fair question, one that I had asked myself several times in the last 24 hours. Why was I risking myself for a stranger? What moved me beyond the initial impulse to save her? "Maybe because I'm tired of living only halfway," I replied honestly. "Since Mary died, I've only existed, not really lived. Helping you, it's made me feel alive again." It wasn't the whole truth, but it was part of it. There was also something in Anna, an inner strength, a resilience despite all the suffering, that reminded me of Mary in her best days. Anna lowered her eyes, absorbing my words. "No one has ever risked themselves for me before," she said softly. "Not even my own mother had the strength to protect me from him." I felt a pang in my chest as I imagined what that girl had gone through. "Look, Anna, I don't know what's going to happen from now on, but I promise that as long as you're under my roof, no one's going to hurt you. Not your stepfather, not those men from the village." She looked at me for a long moment, as if assessing the sincerity of my words. Then, in a gesture that caught me by surprise, she approached and hugged me. It was a quick, almost shy hug, but loaded with emotion. "Thank you," she murmured, pulling away soon after, seeming embarrassed by her own gesture. I cleared my throat, also a little embarrassed. I wasn't used to displays of affection. "Let's go back to the house. I brought some clothes from town for you. I don't know if they'll fit, but they should be better than Zella's." She smiled, a small but genuine smile, and nodded. We walked side by side back to the house. The sun was beginning to lean towards the west, casting longer shadows across the yard. The smell of food came from the kitchen, reminding me that I hadn't eaten since breakfast. In the living room, I handed Anna the bag with the clothes I had bought. She seemed surprised and touched by the gesture. "You didn't have to spend money on me." "It was nothing," I replied. "Go try them on. If they don't fit, we can exchange them next time I go to town." She nodded and went to the room. I took the opportunity to wash my hands and face at the kitchen sink, where Zella was finishing preparing lunch. "How is she?" asked Zella softly. "Scared. Her stepfather met me on the way back from town." Zella made the sign of the cross. "Good heavens! And what did he want?" "To take Anna back, or rather sell her again. He even asked me how much I wanted for her, as if she were merchandise." Zella shook her head, indignant. "There are people in this world who don't deserve the air they breathe, but do you think he might try something against the ranch?" "I don't know, but it's best to stay alert. I've already spoken to Walter to alert the boys." She nodded, placing plates on the table. "Lunch is ready. I'll call the boys. Will you call the girl?" I agreed and went to the hallway. The door to Anna's room was ajar. I knocked lightly. "Anna, lunch is ready." The door opened, and Anna appeared wearing one of the clothes I had bought, a simple blue skirt and a white cotton blouse. The clothes fit reasonably well, maybe a little loose, but much better than Zella's. "Do they fit?" I asked. She smiled, running her hands over the fabric of the skirt. "Perfect. It's been so long since I've had new clothes. Thank you, John." I nodded, dismissing the thanks, and indicated the kitchen. "Let's eat." Zella must have prepared something special today. Lunch was served at the large kitchen table. Besides me, Anna, and Zella, Walter and the other ranch hands also joined us. That's how it was at Clear Creek Ranch. Everyone ate together, boss and employees, a tradition that my father had established and that I maintained. Zella had outdone herself: rice, cowboy beans, pork ribs with yucca, tomato and onion salad, and an egg farofa that was her specialty. For drinks, fresh passion fruit juice. At first, Anna seemed a little shy with the presence of the men, keeping her eyes down and saying little. But little by little, as the meal progressed and the conversation flowed, she relaxed. Walter told stories from the old days of the ranch, from when my father was still alive and the region was much more isolated. Little Joe talked about a mountain lion he had seen near the stream the day before. Tim and Manny discussed the best time to start harvesting the corn. It was an everyday scene on the ranch, but for me, on that day, it seemed different. Maybe it was Anna's presence bringing a new energy to that house that for so long had been just a place of passage between days of solitary work. After lunch, while the men returned to their tasks and Zella organized the kitchen with Anna's help, I went to the office that I rarely used. It was a small room with an old dark wood desk, some shelves with dusty books, and a metal file where I kept ranch documents. I sat down at the desk and picked up paper and pen. I needed to organize my thoughts, plan the next steps. The meeting with Anna's stepfather had made it clear that we couldn't simply wait for events to unfold. First, I needed to ensure the safety of the ranch. I wrote down the need to check the fences, perhaps install some more kind of protection at the main entrances. It would also be good to have someone on watch during the night. Second, I needed to resolve Anna's legal situation. If she really had no documents, as seemed to be the case, it complicated things. Without documents, it would be difficult for her to get work, travel, have a normal life. Third, I needed to find out more about that village and about the men who had bought Anna from her stepfather. If they were involved in the disappearance of other girls, as the sheriff had suggested, that was something too serious to ignore. I was absorbed in these thoughts when I heard a light knock on the door. "Come in." Anna opened the door timidly. "Zella said I could come talk to you." "Of course, come in, and you can just call me John. You don't need the Mister in front. I'm not that old." I tried to smile to make her more at ease. She came in and sat in the chair in front of the desk. "What were you doing?" she asked, looking at my notes. "Planning. We have some issues to resolve." I looked at her seriously. "Anna, I need to know more about you. About your past, about your stepfather, about how you ended up in that village. I know it may be difficult to talk about it, but it's important." She lowered her eyes, nervously fiddling with the hem of her new blouse. "What do you want to know?" "First, your exact age, and if you have any documents, even if you don't have them with you." "I'm 20 years old. I was born on October 2nd, 2004 in Oklahoma City. I lived there until I was 12, when my mom got sick and we moved to Tulsa to be with my stepfather. He already knew my mom before. They had dated when they were young." She paused. "I have a birth certificate, but he has it. I never got a driver's license or other document. He always said it wasn't necessary, that it was a waste of money." I wrote down the information. "What about school? Did you study?" "Until the 9th grade. Then when my mom died, he took me out of school. He said I had to work, help at home." "What kind of work did you do?" She shrugged. "A little bit of everything. I cleaned the house, did laundry for others, sometimes helped at a neighbor's store, but never with a signed contract or anything like that. It was all under the table." I continued asking questions, trying to build a more complete picture of Anna's life. Little by little, a sad story was forming. A girl who had lost her mother early, left at the mercy of an abusive stepfather who saw her only as a burden, or worse, as a potential source of income. "And how did you end up in that village? How did it all happen?" Anna took a deep breath before answering. "About 2 months ago, he started acting strange. He went out more, came back late, sometimes talked to himself. I thought he was drinking more than usual or using drugs. Then last week, he told me he had arranged a job for me on a ranch near Clinton. He said it was to cook and clean for some foreigners who had bought land there." She paused, her eyes lost in memory. I suspected, of course, he never bothered to arrange anything good for me, but I also thought it might be a chance to get out of that house, save some money, maybe run away to Oklahoma City later. She shook her head. "It was naive of me." "Oh, what happened next?" "He drove me to a place I didn't know, in the middle of the woods. He said the foreigners would come pick me up there. I waited with him for almost 2 hours. When they arrived, I immediately realized they weren't foreigners. They were Americans, just dressed strangely with paintings on their bodies. They said something to my stepfather, gave him money. When I understood what was happening, I tried to run, but they held me. Her hands trembled slightly as she told this part. They took me to that village. On the way, they explained that I had been chosen for an important ritual, that it was an honor, that I would be the bride of one of their spirits. I don't know. I screamed, cried, begged them to let me go, but they just laughed. And the ritual? What was that they were doing when I arrived? It was a purification, that's what they said. I had to be immersed in boiling water with herbs to cleanse my body and soul before the wedding with the spirit. It was the second time they had put me in that cauldron. The first was the night before. She shuddered visibly. The water didn't quite boil completely, but it was hot enough to hurt. They threw something in the water too, some herb that made me dizzy, kind of out of reality. And did you see other girls there? Or hear about others? She nodded. There were two more, older than me. They were in another hut, separated. I heard they had already gone through the purification and were in the next phase. I don't know what phase that was, but they seemed different, like they weren't really there, you know? Their eyes empty, without expression. I felt a chill as I heard this. What were they doing to those girls? What kind of drugs were they using to leave them in that state? Would you be able to recognize these men or find the way to the village again? She shook her head, no. I don't know if I could find the way. They took me with my eyes blindfolded on the way there, and the men, there were many, all alike with those paintings. Only one I would recognize for sure, the leader. He had a big scar on his face, from his left eye to his chin, and he was missing 2 fingers on his right hand. I wrote down that description. It could be useful to Sheriff Thompson. Anna, I need you to understand something. At some point, you're going to have to talk to the police about all this. These men need to be stopped before they hurt someone else. She looked at me apprehensively. I know, but I'm afraid. If my stepfather finds out where I am, he already suspects, I reminded her gently. But he's not going to get near you, I promise. She nodded, not fully convinced. How long do I have before talking to the police? 3 days. That's what the sheriff gave me. She took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. All right. In 3 days, I'll go with you to the sheriff's office. I smiled, recognizing the courage of that decision. You're stronger than you think, Anna. It's going to be all right. She returned the smile, a little shaky. Can I do something to help on the ranch? I don't want to stand still, being a burden. You're not a burden, but if you want to help, I'm sure Zella would be happy with a hand in the kitchen. Or you can help me in the front garden. It's been needing care for years. I like gardens, she said, her eyes shining a little. My mom had a small one in the apartment in Oklahoma City, just some plants in pots, but she took care of it as if it were a park. Then it settled. Tomorrow we'll start recovering the garden. She smiled, seeming genuinely excited about the idea. The rest of the afternoon passed quietly. Anna helped Zella with the preparations for dinner, while I went to check the cattle with Walter and the other ranch hands. We reinforced surveillance at the entrances to the ranch, as we had agreed, and little Joe volunteered to do the first watch shift during the night. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, I returned to the house. I found Anna on the porch, sitting in a rocking chair, looking at the horizon. There was a serenity in her expression that I hadn't seen before. "What are you thinking about?" I asked, sitting in the chair next to her. "About how life takes turns," she replied without taking her eyes off the horizon. "Yesterday at this time, I was in that village, thinking I was going to die. And now I'm here, seeing the most beautiful sunset of my life." We were silent for a few minutes, just contemplating the spectacle of nature. The sky gradually darkened, the first stars beginning to appear. John, she corrected herself. "Can I ask about your wife? What was she like?" The question caught me by surprise. It had been a long time since someone had asked me about Mary. People in the area already knew my story and avoided the subject, perhaps fearing to open old wounds. Mary was special, I began, feeling the words come out with difficulty. Strong, determined, but also gentle. She had a way with plants like I've never seen. The front garden was her creation. After she was gone, I didn't have the heart to take care of it. How did you meet? I smiled at the memory. At the 4th of July festival in Tulsa more than 30 years ago. I was in my early 20s, she was 19. I was there with my dad, selling some cattle. I saw her line dancing and, well, it was like the world stopped for a moment. Was it love at first sight? For me, yes. For her, it took a little longer, I laughed. Mary wasn't a woman to be easily impressed. I had to win her over little by little, almost a year of dating before she agreed to marry me. And what was life like for you here on the ranch? Good. Simple, but good. Mary transformed this house. Before it was just a place to sleep between days of work. She made it a home, planted the garden, painted the walls, brought curtains, rugs, small things that make all the difference. I paused, feeling that familiar lump in my throat. We tried to have children for years. We couldn't. It was the only real sadness we had. I'm so sorry, she said softly. It's okay. We learned to be happy, just the two of us. And we had plans. To travel more, see the States when I could leave the ranch in Walter's hands for longer periods. I sighed. Then came the disease. Fast, relentless. In 3 months, she was gone. Anna didn't say anything, just reached out and touched mine briefly, a simple gesture of comfort. She would have liked you, I said after a moment. Mary always said that I needed to open myself more to the world, help people more. I think helping you would have been something she approved of. Anna smiled, her eyes shining in the dim light coming from the living room window. Thank you for sharing that with me. The dinner bell rang, Zella calling everyone to the meal. We got up from the chairs and went inside. Dinner was quieter than lunch. The men were tired after a long day of work, and there was a subtle tension in the air. Everyone knew of the potential threat from Anna's stepfather and the men from the village. After dinner, while Zella and Anna washed the dishes, I checked with Walter on the preparations for the night watch. Little Joe would stand guard until midnight, when Tim would replace him. Manny would take over in the early hours of the morning. "And you, boss? Are you going to get some sleep?" asked Walter. "I'll try, but leave the rifle within reach." He nodded, understanding. I went back to the house. Anna had already retired to her room, and Zella was finishing organizing the kitchen. "I'm going home, John," she said. "I left a teapot ready in case you or the girl want it during the night." "Thank you, Zella, for everything." She smiled, adjusting the scarf on her head. "You don't need to thank me. It's good to have a young woman in the house again. It brings life." She paused. "The girl has already suffered a lot. You can see it in her eyes, but she's strong. She'll recover." "I hope so." After Zella left, I checked the doors and windows, making sure everything was locked. I grabbed the rifle I kept in the living room and went to my room. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of the day on my shoulders. So many things had happened in the last 24 hours that it felt like a whole week. The rescue of Anna, the trip to town, the meeting with her stepfather. My quiet, solitary life had been turned upside down. And yet, despite the worry and the tension, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose, as if finally I was doing something that really mattered. I placed the rifle beside the bed and lay down without taking off my clothes. I doubted I would be able to sleep deeply, but I needed to rest a little. I closed my eyes, listening to the night sounds of the ranch, the croaking of frogs in the nearby swamp, the song of the crickets, the occasional moo of some cow in the pasture. Familiar, comforting sounds. But there were also new sounds, sounds of alert, the footsteps of little Joe making his rounds, the distant barking of the dogs responding to some noise in the woods, the creaking of the old house, adjusting to the drop in nighttime temperature. It must have been around 2 in the morning when I woke up startled. I didn't know what had awakened me. Perhaps a dream, perhaps a noise. I lay still in bed for a moment, listening. The house was silent. Outside, the crickets sang their nightly chorus, and an owl hooted in the distance. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Even so, something bothered me. A feeling, more than a sound or a vision. That unease that we sometimes feel without knowing exactly why. I got up silently, grabbed the rifle and left the room. The hallway was dark, lit only by the faint moonlight coming through the living room window. I stopped in front of Anna's door and listened. No sound came from inside. I went to the living room, then to the kitchen. Everything was in order, exactly as I had left it before going to bed. The doors remained locked, the windows closed. I opened the front door carefully and went out to the porch. The night was clear, with thousands of stars shining in the cloudless sky. The air was fresh, carrying the smell of earth and dewy grass. I saw Tim near the corral, making his rounds. He saw me too and waved, indicating that everything was quiet. I returned the wave and went back inside. I was about to return to my room when I heard a sound coming from Anna's room, a muffled groan, as if she were having a nightmare. I approached the door and listened again. Another groan, followed by unintelligible words. I knocked lightly on the door. "Anna, is everything all right?" No answer, just another groan. Worried, I opened the door slowly. The moonlight entered through the window, partially illuminating the room. Anna was in bed, tossing and turning, clearly trapped in some bad dream. "No, please, no," she murmured, her voice full of fear. For a moment, she didn't seem to recognize me. "It's okay," I said calmly. "You're safe. It was just a nightmare." She stared at me for a moment, her breathing heavy. Then, slowly, understanding returned to her eyes. "John, it's okay," I repeated. "I heard you stirring. You seemed to be having a bad dream." She ran her hands over her face, trying to brush away the traces of the nightmare. "Sorry to wake you." "You didn't wake me. I was already up." I sat on the edge of the bed. "Do you want to talk about the dream?" She shook her head no, but after a moment of silence, she spoke. "It was about the village, the cauldron, but this time, no one came to save me." She shuddered. "It seemed so real, but it wasn't real. You're here. You're safe." She nodded, hugging her knees. "I know it's silly, but could you stay here just a little longer, until I can fall asleep again?" "Of course." I picked up a chair that was in the corner of the room and placed it near the bed. Anna lay down again, pulling the blanket up to her chin. Her eyes, still scared, didn't leave me, as if she feared that I might disappear if she blinked. "Try to relax," I said softly. "Think about good things, about the garden we're going to start recovering tomorrow, for example." She smiled weakly. "What kind of flowers are we going to plant?" "All kinds. Roses, daisies, sunflowers, whatever you prefer." "I like sunflowers," she murmured, her eyes beginning to droop. "They always turn to the sun, no matter where it is." "Then we'll have sunflowers, a whole field of them." Her smile widened a little, and soon her eyes closed. I stayed watching her for some time, until I was sure she was sleeping deeply. Then I returned silently to my room. The rest of the night passed without incident. When the first rays of sun began to enter through the window, I was already up again, after a few hours of restless sleep. I found Manny in the yard, finishing his watch shift. "Everything quiet, boss," he reported. "No strange movement during the night." I thanked him and the other men for their vigilance. They all seemed tired, but determined to continue protecting the ranch and its new guest. Zella arrived early, as always, and began to prepare breakfast. Inna appeared in the kitchen shortly after, seeming rested despite the nightly nightmare. "Good morning," she said, smiling shyly. "Can I help with breakfast?" "Of course, girl," replied Zella. "You can cut these fruits while I finish making the cornbread." I watched the two of them working together in the kitchen, moving in an almost natural harmony, as if Anna had always been there. It was a simple, everyday scene, but it somehow warmed my old heart. The day promised to be hot, with the sky clear and the sun shining brightly from early on. After breakfast, fulfilling the promise made the night before, Anna and I went to the garden in front of the house. It was a large space surrounded by a small wooden fence that had been Mary's pride and joy. Now it was abandoned, with weeds taking over the beds, the original plants struggling to survive amidst the neglect. "We can save it," said Anna, kneeling to examine a rose bush almost hidden by the tall grass. "The roots still seem strong." I fetched tools from the shed, shovels, rakes, pruning shears, and together we began to work. Anna showed she knew plants well, identifying which could be saved and which were beyond recovery. We worked side by side throughout the morning, pulling weeds, pruning dry branches, loosening the parched soil. The sun grew stronger as the morning progressed, but neither the heat nor the fatigue seemed to diminish Anna's enthusiasm. "Your wife must have loved this garden very much," she commented while cleaning a bed. "You can feel the care with which it was planned." "It was her passion," I replied, recalling how Mary spent hours there, talking to the plants as if they were old friends. The days in the hospital dragged on long and monotonous. The room, although clean and well lit, had that sterile and impersonal atmosphere that no decoration or occasional flower could completely mitigate. The doctors spoke in terms of satisfactory progress and recovery within expectations, technical phrases that meant little to me, except that I still couldn't go home. Anna came every day. At first, she stayed the whole time, sleeping in an uncomfortable armchair next to the bed. It took the energetic intervention of Zella, who appeared on the third day after I woke up, to convince her to establish a healthier routine. "Girl, you're going to end up hospitalized too," said Zella, with that unique mix of firmness and affection that only she could balance. "The boss isn't going to run away from here, and the ranch needs someone to take care of things while he's stuck in this bed." Anna protested, of course. But Zella was a force of nature when she decided that something needed to be done. In the end, they agreed to a compromise. Anna would spend the mornings on the ranch, helping with daily tasks, and the afternoons and early evenings with me at the hospital. Thus began a routine that, despite the circumstances, brought a strange sense of normality. Every morning, after the coffee that I barely touched, hospital food being what it is, the nurses helped me with hygiene and changed the dressings. Afterwards, I usually received a visit from Dr. Torres, a middle-aged man with a calm that inspired confidence. "You are a lucky man, John," he used to say as he examined the still fresh scar on my abdomen. A few inches to the right, and we would be having a very different conversation, or no conversation to be more precise. I knew he was right. Ronaldo's knife had pierced my spleen and narrowly missed the aorta artery, which would have been fatal. The doctors had to remove part of the spleen, but assured me that the organ would regenerate over time and that I could live normally, although I would need to take some extra care with infections. The mornings without Anna were the most difficult. I tried to distract myself with the small television attached to the wall or with the newspapers that the nurses kindly brought me. Sometimes Walter appeared for a visit, bringing news from the ranch and the investigation into the children of the earth. The police continued to interrogate the cult members who were arrested, he told me on one of those visits. It seems that this group has existed for at least 5 years, but only recently did they begin with the sacrifices. He paused, uncomfortable with the subject. They discovered another hideout of theirs, near Oklahoma City. They found documents, strange books, things like that. And the women, the ones who were rescued, they're recovering from what I know. One of them, the teacher from Enid, has already returned to her family. The other two are still in treatment. They were very mistreated, boss. I nodded gravely. It was hard to imagine the horror that those women had gone through, and even harder to think that Anna could have had the same fate if we hadn't arrived in time. What about little Joe? Any news? Walter's face closed in an expression of regret. They found his body yesterday, boss, in a ditch near the abandoned village. It seems he was killed on the same day we were ambushed. The news hit me like a punch to the stomach. Little Joe was young, no more than 25 years old. He had started working on the ranch as a teenager, following in the footsteps of his father, who had also been a ranch hand at Clear Creek until he retired. He was a good guy, hardworking, always with a smile on his face and a joke on the tip of his tongue. Does the family know? Yes. The police notified them yesterday. They are arranging the release of the body for burial. I want the ranch to cover all expenses, I said, feeling a lump in my throat. And I want you to continue paying his salary to the family, at least for a year. It was the least I could do. I already took the liberty of offering that to the family, boss. I knew you would want it that way. I thanked Walter with a nod, unable to speak for a moment. Another life lost in all that madness, another family destroyed by the insanity of that cult. The afternoons when Anna arrived brought a different light to the impersonal room of the hospital. She always came with stories from the ranch, of how the garden was progressing, of how Dusty had neighed with joy when she brought him an apple, of how the new calves were growing strong. Zella taught me how to make that pumpkin candy that you like, she told me one of those afternoons, sitting on the edge of the bed. The secret is cinnamon, she said, and a little bit of clove. It was strange and wonderful at the same time, the way she had adapted to life on the ranch, how she had found her place among Zella, Walter, and the others, as if she had always been there, as if that was her natural home. Sometimes we talked about what had happened, about Augusto and the children of the earth, about Ronaldo and his betrayal, about the monastery and the ritual that never came to be completed. It was painful, but necessary, like draining a wound so that it could heal properly. I still have nightmares, she confessed one night, when it was already getting dark outside and the lights in the hallway had been dimmed. I dream that I'm in that cauldron again, that no one comes to save me. Or worse, that they get you too, that I have to watch while... Her voice trailed off, and she didn't complete the sentence. I took her hand, squeezing it gently. I have nightmares too, I admitted. I dream that I arrived too late, that I can't find you at the monastery. I wake up in a cold sweat, my heart racing. She squeezed my hand back, a small gesture of mutual understanding. The doctor said that's normal, that the brain needs time to process the trauma, that the nightmares will diminish over time. And do you believe that? She shrugged, a gesture that I had learned to recognize as her way of saying that she wanted to believe it, but had doubts. I have to believe in something, don't I? Otherwise... She left the sentence hanging in the air, but I understood what she meant. Without hope that things would get better, how could one continue? It was also during these conversations at the hospital that we began to talk about the future, about what would happen when I was discharged, about what Anna would do next. I've already thought about it, she said one day, sitting in her usual armchair, her black hair tied in a simple ponytail. I want to study, finish high school, maybe go to college someday. That's a great idea, I encouraged. You're smart, you learn fast, you can study whatever you want. I like plants, she continued, her eyes shining with an animation that she rarely showed. I've always liked them. Even when I lived with my mom in Oklahoma City in that small apartment, I had my little plants on the window. I thought about doing something with that. Agronomy, maybe, or biology. Oklahoma State University has a great agronomy program in Stillwater, I commented, recalling a distant nephew who had studied there. And it's close enough for you to be able to come back to the ranch on weekends if you want. She looked at me, surprised. You want me to stay on the ranch? The question caught me off guard. I hadn't considered another possibility. Of course I do. I mean, if you want to. Clear Creek is your home now, Anna, for as long as you want. Her eyes filled with tears, and she lowered her face, trying to hide them. I've never had a place to call home, not really. Not even when my mum was alive. We were always moving, running from something or someone. I reached out and touched her face gently, lifting it so that she could look me in the eyes. Now you have, and no one's going to take it away from you. It was a moment of connection so deep, so real, that for an instant the hospital room, the trauma of the past, the uncertainties of the future, everything disappeared. It was just the two of us, two lonely souls who had found something precious in each other, understanding, acceptance, maybe even a form of love that transcended simple definitions. The moment was interrupted by the entrance of a nurse, bringing the evening medication. Anna pulled away, wiping away the tears discreetly, while I tried to act naturally, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But something had happened. A subtle change, almost imperceptible, but definitive. Like when the first raindrop falls after months of drought, announcing the end of a long period of aridity. After 3 weeks in the Tulsa hospital, I finally received authorization to return home. Dr. Torres made a point of personally giving me a detailed list of care and restrictions. No physical exertion for at least another month, he emphasized, looking at me sternly over his glasses. That means no riding, no lifting, no working in the fields. Understood? I nodded, although I knew it would be difficult to stand still on a ranch where there was always something that needed to be done. The internal stitches will take time to dissolve completely, he continued. You may feel some occasional discomfort, perhaps even mild pain in some movements. That's normal. But any intense pain, fever, or swelling in the area, I want you to come to the hospital immediately. Again, I nodded, like an obedient student before a demanding teacher. And we're going to continue with the antibiotics for another 2 weeks. Without a fully functional spleen, you're more susceptible to infections. We don't want to take risks. Zella, who had come with Anna to pick me up, listened to everything attentively, clearly memorizing each instruction. I knew she would be relentless in ensuring that I followed all medical orders to the letter. You can count on it, Doctor, she assured him. I'll make sure he behaves himself. Doctor. Torres smiled, visibly relieved to have an ally. Great. Then I think everything is ready for discharge. You just need to go to the front desk to sign some papers, and you'll be free to go. The trip back to the ranch was slow and careful. Walter drove the old Jeep, recovered from the road where it had been left with a flat tire, with unusual caution, dodging potholes and reducing speed on the curves to avoid bumps that could cause me pain. Anna was sitting next to me in the back seat, while Zella occupied the passenger seat. From time to time, Anna held my hand when we passed through a rougher stretch of road, as if she wanted to absorb some of the pain that I might feel. The scrubland landscape passed by the window, familiar and comforting. It was early October, and the first rains of the season had transformed the vegetation. What was once a golden and dry carpet now began to green, with new shoots emerging on trees that seemed dead weeks before. The scrubland has this incredible capacity for rebirth, to appear completely dead during the drought, only to explode into life with the first rains. A lesson in resilience that nature teaches us if we are willing to learn. When we finally spotted the outlines of Clear Creek Ranch on the horizon, I felt an emotion that I didn't expect. It was like returning from a long trip, that feeling of relief and belonging that only home provides. Tim and Manny were waiting for us in the yard, along with 2 new ranch hands that Walter had hired to replace little Joe. Everyone came to greet us when the Jeep stopped, expressions of genuine joy on their faces at seeing me back. "Welcome back, boss," said Tim, the oldest of the ranch hands, with a broad smile that showed the gap in his front teeth. "The ranch isn't the same without you." I thanked them, touched by the warm welcome. These men weren't just employees, they were almost family, people who had shared years of work, joys and difficulties with me. Walter and Tim helped me get out of the Jeep and into the house, one on each side, serving as support. I was still weak, and the doctor had warned me that fatigue could persist for some time while my body recovered from the surgery and blood loss. When I entered the living room of the house, I stopped in surprise. The place was different, not dramatically, but in small details that made all the difference. There were fresh flowers in a vase on the coffee table, new curtains on the windows, and the wooden floor shone as if it had been recently waxed. Anna and Zella insisted on getting everything in order for your return, explained Walter, noting my surprise. They worked all day yesterday, cleaning and arranging. I looked at Anna, who smiled shyly. We wanted everything to be perfect for you to come back, she said. It's more than perfect, I replied, sincerely touched by the care and consideration. It's like a true home. She blushed slightly, pleased with the compliment. Zella, always practical, was already on her way to the kitchen. I'm going to prepare a special lunch, she announced. After weeks of eating that slop they call food at the hospital, you need real food to regain your strength. No one dared contradict her. The men helped me get to the room, where everything was also impeccable. Clean and fragrant sheets, soft pillows, a jug of fresh water on the bedside table. Small comforts that seemed indescribable luxuries after the sterile environment of the hospital. Do you need anything else, boss? Asked Walter, after helping me sit on the edge of the bed. No, thank you. I just want to rest a little before lunch. He nodded, understanding, and left the room, closing the door quietly behind him. I sat for a few minutes, just absorbing the feeling of being back, of being home. The familiar sounds, the occasional creaking of the old wood, the distant crowing of a rooster, the murmur of voices in the kitchen, were like a comforting lullaby after weeks of hospital noises. I got up carefully and went to the window. From there, I could see part of the front garden, which Anna and I had started to recover before everything happened. To my surprise, the garden was now flourishing, with well-kept beds, pruned plants, and even some new flowers that I didn't recognize. Anna's been busy, I murmured to myself, an involuntary smile forming on my lips. I returned to the bed and lay down carefully, feeling a twinge of pain in my abdomen with the movement. The doctor had said that was normal, that it would take time until I could move without discomfort. Patience had never been my strength, but I would have to learn. I closed my eyes, thinking of taking just a brief nap before lunch. But the fatigue of the trip, combined with the comfort of being finally in my own bed, pulled me into a deep sleep before I realized it. I dreamed of the garden. I was sitting on a rustic bench in the middle of it, the afternoon sun creating golden patterns through the leaves of the trees. Anna was there too, moving between the beds, taking care of the plants with loving attention. Mary was next to me on the bench, smiling that serene smile that I loved so much. She's good for you, said Mary in the dream, watching Anna, and for the garden too. I miss you, I replied, my voice choked up even in the dream. Mary touched my face gently, the way she used to do when she was alive. I know, but it's not me you need now. Before I could answer, she got up and walked towards Anna. The two talked for a moment, words that I couldn't hear, then laughed together, like old friends. Then Mary turned and walked beyond the garden, disappearing gradually in the golden light of the sun. I woke up with soft knocks on the door. For a moment I was disoriented, the dream still alive in my mind. Yes? I called, sitting up in bed carefully. The door opened, and Anna poked her head in. Lunch is ready, she announced. Do you want me to bring it here to the room? No, I'm going to the kitchen, I replied, already getting up. I've spent too much time lying down in the last few weeks. She entered the room and came to help me, offering her arm as support. I accepted, not so much because I needed it, although I really did, but for the simple pleasure of the contact. Did you sleep well? she asked as we walked slowly down the hallway. Yes, I replied, thinking of the dream. Very well. The kitchen was filled with delicious aromas that made my stomach rumble in anticipation. Zella had prepared a real feast. Fluffy rice, cowboy beans, roast pork loin with farofa, yucca cooked in butter, tomato and onion salad, and to complete it, a pumpkin candy that I recognized as the one Anna had mentioned learning to make. Zella, are you trying to kill me with so much food? I joked, sitting at the head of the table, my usual place. She laughed, pleased with the reaction. After spending weeks eating that swill they call food at the hospital, you need to regain what you've lost. You're thin as can be. It was true. I had lost weight during the hospitalization, both from the food and from the forced inactivity. But with Zella back in the kitchen, I suspected that this would be quickly remedied. Walter, Tim, and the others joined us for lunch, as was customary on the ranch. The conversation flowed naturally around the table, with the men telling the news of the ranch, discussing the weather, speculating about when we would start harvesting the corn that had been planted months before. It was a moment of normalcy, of comforting routine after weeks of chaos and uncertainty, and even so, there was something different, something new in the air. Perhaps it was the way Anna fit naturally into that familiar scene, as if she had always been there. Or perhaps it was myself, seeing everything with new eyes after the near-death experience. After lunch, the men returned to work, and Zella began to organize the kitchen, politely refusing the help offered by Anna. Go show the boss the garden, she suggested. He'll like to see how beautiful it is now. Anna looked at me, a silent question in her eyes. I'd love to see the garden, I confirmed, getting up carefully from the chair. If I'm not too tired for a little walk. Bo, we'll go slowly, she said, again offering her arm as support. We went out to the porch and then down the few steps that led to the front garden. The afternoon sun was warm, but not scalding, and a gentle breeze brought the smell of earth and plants. The garden had been transformed. The beds that we had started to clean were now completely free of weeds and full of healthy plants. The rose bushes, which were barely visible before, now displayed promising buds. There were also new plants that I didn't recognize, arranged in patterns that created a harmonious visual. Did you do all this alone? I asked, genuinely impressed. Anna smiled, obviously proud of her work. Zella helped me with some things. And Tim is surprisingly good with plants, did you know? He knows every herb in the scrubland by name. We walked slowly around the perimeter of the garden, Anna pointing out the different plants, explaining why she had chosen each one, how she had rescued some that seemed beyond salvation. And here, she said, guiding me to a special bed in the center of the garden, I planted this for you. It was a small sunflower, still young, but already showing signs that it would be strong and healthy. Remember, I said I liked sunflowers. How they always turn to the sun? She smiled, a little shy. I thought it would be symbolic, after all we've been through. I was speechless for a moment, touched by the gesture and its meaning. The sunflower, always seeking the light even on the cloudiest days. A perfect metaphor for resilience, for hope. It's perfect, I managed to say finally. Thank you, Anna, for all this, for taking care of Mary's garden with so much love. She lowered her eyes, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. It was the least I could do, after all you've done for me. Indeed, there was a rustic wooden bench nearby, much like the one in my dream. I suggested we sit down, feeling my legs weak after the brief walk through the garden. The doctor said the weakness will pass little by little, I commented, frustrated with my own limitations. But it's annoying to get tired so easily. You almost died, John, Anna reminded gently. Your body needs time to recover completely. You can't rush that. She was right, of course. But patience had never been my strength, especially when it came to my own health. We sat in silence for a few minutes, just appreciating the garden, the sunny day, the simple fact that we were alive and together. It was Anna who finally broke the silence. The police came here yesterday. I turned to look at her, surprised. The police? Why? Agent Carter from the FBI. He wanted to inform me about the developments in the investigation. She paused, as if organizing her thoughts. They've identified all the victims now, 7 in total, including the ones who didn't survive. I felt a tightness in my chest. 7 lives destroyed by that insane cult. And the cult members? The ones who were arrested? Most are cooperating with the investigation, apparently. Many were, how can I say it? Followers, not leaders. Vulnerable people who were manipulated by Augusto and a few others at the top of the hierarchy. She sighed. It's hard to imagine how someone can be convinced to participate in something so horrible. People can be led to do terrible things when they believe they are serving a greater purpose, I commented. History is full of examples. Anna nodded, thoughtful. Augusto had this charisma, you know, even with me, even knowing that I would be sacrificed. There were moments when he almost convinced me that it was something special, something important. She shuddered visibly. It's scary to realize how the mind can be manipulated. I took her hand, squeezing it gently in a gesture of support. But you resisted. You didn't let yourself be convinced. Because I had something to hold on to, she replied, looking me in the eyes. The hope that someone would come to save me, and you came. We stayed like that for a moment, looking at each other, our hands clasped. There was so much to say, so many unexpressed feelings floating in the air between us. But the moment was broken by the sound of a vehicle approaching. We looked towards the road and saw a police truck entering the property. Speaking of the devil, murmured Anna. That must be Agent Carter again. The truck stopped in the yard, and 2 men got out. Agent Carter, whom I had met at the hospital, and another man who I didn't recognize, also wearing what appeared to be an FBI uniform. Mr. Smith, called Carter, approaching the garden. Good to see you recovered and at home. I got up with Anna's help, feeling a twinge of pain in my abdomen with the movement. Agent Carter, I greeted. What brings you to Clear Creek? More questions? He smiled slightly, but it was a tense smile. Unfortunately, yes. But this time, it's not just questions. We have information that we need to share with you. Worrying information. Anna tensed beside me, and I felt her hand squeeze my arm a little tighter. What kind of information? I asked, already feeling a chill in my stomach. Carter looked at the other man, who nodded gravely. Perhaps it's better if we talk inside the house, suggested Carter. It's a delicate matter. I agreed, and Anna guided us back inside. In the living room, Zella appeared promptly, offering coffee to the visitors, who accepted politely. When we were all seated, Carter began. This is Agent Miller, a specialist in the analysis of sects and cults. He's been working on the investigation since the beginning. And the older man inclined his head in greeting. As I explained briefly to Miss Anna yesterday, continued Carter, we've identified all the victims of the children of the earth, 7 women in all, 3 of whom fortunately were rescued alive. And the other 4, I asked, although I already knew the answer. Didn't survive the rituals, replied Carter somberly. We found their remains in ditches near the monastery. Anna shuddered visibly, and I put my arm around her shoulders in a protective gesture. But you already told us that before, I said. What's changed? What worrying information are you talking about? Carter exchanged another look with Miller, then took a deep breath. During the interrogations, several cult members mentioned something that we initially didn't take too seriously. They spoke of a contingency plan if something went wrong with the main ritual. Carter paused, as if searching for the right words. They said that Augusto had prepared an alternative ritual if they lost the main chosen one. Anna paled beside me. I was that main chosen one? Yes, confirmed Miller, speaking for the first time. His voice was grave, almost professorial. But what worries us is not the past, but what they plan to do next. And what would that be? I asked, feeling a growing unease. According to several consistent testimonies, Augusto believed that if the main ritual failed, they could perform an alternative ritual, less powerful, according to him, but still effective for what they called the Great Awakening. Miller looked directly at Anna. For this ritual, they would need the blood of the person who interfered in the destiny of the Chosen One. A heavy silence fell over the room as we absorbed the meaning of those words. "John," murmured Anna, turning to me with wide eyes, "they're coming after you." "Not necessarily," Carter interjected quickly. "Augusto is dead, and most of the more fanatical members of the cult are imprisoned. Those who remain at large are mostly low-ranking followers, not leaders. But some remain at large," I insisted, picking up on what he wasn't saying explicitly. Carter nodded reluctantly. 3 important members of Augusto's inner circle were not found in the operations. One of them in particular worries us. Gabriel Mendez, Augusto's right-hand man. According to several testimonies, he was the most fanatical after Augusto himself, the most dedicated to the idea of the Great Awakening. "And you think he might try to complete the work?" asked Anna, her voice trembling. "It's a possibility that we cannot ignore," replied Miller, "especially because we found detailed notes on the so-called alternative ritual in one of the group's hideouts. And your name, Mr. Smith, was written in them, marked as the interferer who should be the focus of the ritual." I felt a chill run down my spine. The idea that that madness still wasn't over, that there were still people out there who might be planning to use me in some kind of macabre ritual, was almost surreal. "And what do you suggest we do?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "First, redouble the vigilance on the ranch," replied Carter. "We've already spoken to the sheriff in Tulsa, and he's agreed to increase patrols in this area. We'd also like to leave an agent here, at least for a few weeks, until we locate the fugitive members." I looked at Anna, who seemed as shaken as I felt. Then at Zella, who had remained silent in the corner of the room, but whose face expressed a mixture of fear and indignation. "If that's what we need to do to ensure everyone's safety, then I agree," I said finally. "Great," said Carter, seeming relieved. "Agent Davis will arrive early tomorrow. He's discreet and experienced. He won't interfere with the ranch's routine more than is absolutely necessary." "And how long will this last?" asked Anna. "This threat?" Miller and Carter exchanged glances before Miller replied, "It's hard to say. Beliefs like those of this cult can be extremely persistent. Some members may simply give up without Augusto's leadership. Others may interpret his death as a type of martyrdom, further strengthening their dedication to the cause. But with the information we're collecting from the members who are cooperating," added Carter, "we believe we can locate the fugitives soon, especially Gabriel Mendez. He's the key to all of this." After a few more details about the security measures and recommendations for precaution, the agents prepared to leave. Carter handed me a card with his direct number. "Anything suspicious, any detail that seems out of the ordinary, don't hesitate to call at any time." I thanked him and accompanied them to the door, Anna beside me. When the truck disappeared down the road, we returned to the living room, where Zella still was, her face full of worry. "My God," she murmured, making the sign of the cross. "Will this never end?" "It will end, Zella," I assured, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "The police will find those fugitives, and all this will be just a bad memory." She nodded, not seeming fully convinced, and returned to the kitchen, murmuring prayers as she went. Anna and I were left alone in the room, a heavy silence between us. "I'm sorry," she said finally, her voice low and trembling. "It seems I only bring trouble to your life." I turned to her, surprised. "Anna, none of this is your fault. You're a victim in all this, as much as I am. But if it weren't for me, you would never have gotten involved with the children of the earth. You would never have been stabbed. You would never be under threat of a macabre ritual now." I approached her and took her hands in mine. "Listen carefully. I don't regret anything I did. Nothing. If I could go back in time, I would do everything exactly the same. Understand? She looked at me, her eyes shining with contained tears. Why? Why risk so much for someone you barely knew? It was a question that I had asked myself many times. Why had I risked everything for a stranger? The answer was complex and simple at the same time. Because it was the right thing to do, I replied. Because at that moment on that road, I saw someone needing help and I couldn't simply move on. And then I paused, searching for the right words. Then, when I really got to know you, when I saw your strength, your resilience despite everything you've been through, I realized that I had found something rare, something precious, a connection that I hadn't felt in a long time. A tear ran down Anna's face, and she wiped it away quickly. I'm so afraid, she confessed. Afraid that they'll come back, afraid that they'll hurt you again, because of me. It's not going to happen, I guaranteed, although I had no way to be sure. We're prepared now. The police are involved. We have Walter, Tim, and the others, and tomorrow we'll have a federal agent here. She nodded, trying to look comforted, but the fear was still there, in her eyes, in the tension of her shoulders. We'll get through this together, I promised, like we've gotten through everything so far. Agent Davis arrived the next morning, as promised. He was a middle-aged man, tall and thin, with a face that didn't reveal much. Discreet, as Carter had said, he quickly familiarized himself with the ranch and its surroundings, establishing a routine that interfered minimally in our lives. During the day, he usually stayed close to the house, sometimes patrolling the property or talking with Walter and the ranch hands. At night, he settled in a small room at the back of the house, which had been prepared for him. Life on the ranch tried to return to an appearance of normality. Everything, the age difference, what people are going to say, my past, everything that's happened, especially with all that, I affirmed, because all that is part of who you are, and it's you, all of you, that I love. A tear trickled down her face, and I wiped it away gently with my thumb. I love you too, she said, her voice choked up. More than I can express. I leaned in and kissed her softly on the lips. A gentle kiss, almost chaste, but full of promise. When we separated, there was a new sparkle in her eyes, a determination that I already knew well. So, when we get back to the ranch, I want to continue with the plans, she declared. Study, finish my GED, maybe go to college later. I want to build a life, John, a life with you, but also my own. I smiled, proud of her strength, of her independence. I think it's wonderful, and I'm going to support you every step of the way. And in the meantime, she continued, I want to help on the ranch. Learn more about the work, about the cattle, about the crops. I want Clear Creek to really be my home, not just a place where I'm staying. It already is your home, I assured. It has been since you first set foot there. She smiled, a full smile that lit up her whole face. Thank you for everything, for saving me, for believing in me, for loving me. You don't need to thank me. You've done the same for me. And it was true. Anna had saved me as much as I had saved her. She had rescued me from an empty existence, from days that dragged on without purpose, from a life that was just a shadow of what it could be. In the following week, when we finally returned to Clear Creek Ranch, it was like returning to a place transformed. Not because the ranch had changed, although the garden was even more beautiful, thanks to the continued care of Zella and, surprisingly, of Walter, who had discovered an unexpected talent for gardening. No, the transformation was in us. In how we saw the place, in how we felt in it. It was no longer just a ranch in rural Oklahoma. It was a home, our home. Anna's recovery was faster than the doctors had initially predicted. Her youth and determination were crucial factors. 3 weeks after returning from the hospital, she was already able to move her arm without significant pain, although she still had limitations. Physical therapy became part of our daily routine. I accompanied her to the sessions in Tulsa twice a week, and on the other days, we practiced the exercises at home, in the garden or on the porch. As promised, she enrolled in the GED program in Tulsa. Classes were at night, 3 times a week, and I took her and picked her up personally, not entrusting that task to anyone else, even with Gabriel and his followers imprisoned. During the day, she helped Zella in the kitchen, took care of the garden that had become her passion, and, as she grew stronger, began to learn more about the work on the ranch. Walter taught her about the cattle, Tim about the crops, and I about the administration of the business. At night, when she wasn't at school, we sat on the porch watching the stars, talking about the day, about the future, about us. Sometimes, when the pain in her shoulder was especially strong, I held her in my arms, gently, until she fell asleep. Our relationship evolved naturally, without haste. There were kisses, caresses, moments of growing intimacy, but always respecting her time, her past experiences, her physical and emotional scars. It was Anna who decided when she was ready for the next step. On a full moon night, after returning from school, she came to my room, wearing only a simple cotton nightgown. Her eyes shone with a shared love in the quiet hours of the dawn, a real life, with challenges and difficulties, but also with a deep and constant joy that came from knowing that no matter what happened, we were no longer alone. On a particularly beautiful Sunday morning, about 2 years after the day I had heard that scream on the road and found a young woman in a cauldron, I asked Anna to marry me. It wasn't anything elaborate or grandiose. We were in the garden, like so many other mornings, tending to the plants, talking about everything and nothing. Anna had just finished her first semester at the agronomy program in Oklahoma State University, where she went 3 times a week, returning to the ranch on the other days. She was kneeling in front of a bed of sunflowers, the same ones she had planted when I was in the hospital, now huge and vibrant. When I knelt beside her, "Anna," I began, my heart beating fast in my chest despite the certainty of what I was doing. "You've changed my life in ways I never imagined possible. You've brought light where there was darkness, hope where there was despair, life where there was only existence." She turned to me, surprise and curiosity in her eyes. "These 2 years with you have been the happiest of my life," I continued, taking her hands in mine. "And I want to spend all the years that remain to me by your side. As your partner, your friend, your husband." I paused, taking a deep breath. "Anna Paula, would you do me the honor of marrying me?" Her eyes filled with tears, but her smile was the most radiant I had ever seen. "Yes," she replied simply. "Yes, John Smith. I can't imagine anything that would make me happier." And right there, kneeling among the sunflowers, we sealed our commitment with a kiss that carried all the promises of the future that we would build together. The wedding was a simple ceremony in the small church in Tulsa just 3 months later. Zella, Walter, and everyone from the ranch were there, of course. But also came Sheriff Thompson, Carter, and Davis, the doctors and nurses who had taken care of us in the hospital, teachers and colleagues of Anna from college. As I waited at the altar, watching Anna walk towards me, dressed in a simple but elegant white dress, a bouquet of sunflowers in her hands, I thought of everything we had gone through to get there, of the dangers, the pains, the uncertainties, but also in the courage, in the determination, in the love that had grown between us, overcoming all adversities. I thought of Mary, too, not with sadness or guilt, but with gratitude for the years we had shared, for the love we had lived. Somehow I felt that she would be happy for me, for us, that, as in the dream I had in the hospital, she would truly be giving me her blessing to move on. When Anna arrived at the altar and placed her hand in mine, I felt a deep peace wash over me. The absolute certainty that no matter what the future held, we would face it together, as we had faced everything until then. "Ready?" I murmured as the priest prepared to begin the ceremony. She smiled, that smile that lit up her whole face and warmed my heart more than ever. And so, under the loving gaze of friends who had become family, we promised each other eternal love, unconditional support, true partnership. They weren't just words, empty rituals repeated by tradition. They were genuine promises, forged in the trials we had faced, tempered by the love that had blossomed between us against all odds. When the priest finally pronounced the words that declared us husband and wife, the church exploded in applause and cheers. But for me, the world had shrunk to just the two of us, the incredible woman who was now my wife and me, a man transformed by the power of a love that had arrived when I least expected it. Later, during the small reception on the ranch, while we danced our first dance as a couple in the yard, decorated with lights and flowers, Anna rested her head on my chest and murmured, "I thought I would never find a home, you know. After my mom died, I thought I would always be lost, always looking for what's the alternative? Just sit here twiddling our thumbs while they do God knows what to her? I can't do that. I won't." Sheriff Lima seemed torn between his professional duty to protect me and his human understanding of my need to save Anna. "At least wait for backup," he tried. "Cardoso and the team will be here in under half an hour." "Anna might not have half an hour," I replied, already grabbing my shotgun from the gun cabinet and checking if it was loaded. "Don't you get it? They took her to lure me out. If I don't show soon, they might decide she's no longer useful." The thought of what they might do to Anna if that happened was unbearable. I couldn't risk it. I couldn't lose her. Sheriff Lima must have seen the unwavering determination in my eyes because he sighed deeply. "All right, but you're not going alone. I'm going with you. And Billy and the boys too, if they're willing." "You can bet your bottom dollar we are," confirmed Billy from the doorway, with Hank and the others nodding behind him. "Granny Z stays here," I decided. "Someone needs to be here when Cardoso and the backup arrive to explain the situation and tell them where we went." "And where are we headed, boss?" asked Hank. "We don't know where they're holding the girl." It was a crucial question. Where would Gabriel Mendez have taken Anna? It had to be a place with significance for the ritual, a secluded place where they wouldn't be easily discovered. "The creek," I said, the certainty growing in me. "The place where Anna and I were this afternoon. It's isolated, has running water, which is often important in rituals, and it's on the property so they'd know the way if they were watching us." Sheriff Lima considered it for a moment, then nodded. "Makes sense. Let's go." We didn't waste any more time. While the men armed themselves with whatever they had available, shotguns, hunting knives, even farm tools that could serve as weapons, I went to wake Granny Z and quickly explained the situation. "Good Lord," she murmured, making the sign of the cross. "That's awful, that poor girl." "Stay here and wait for Cardoso," I instructed. "Tell him to follow us to the creek and pray for us, Zephyr. We're going to need all the help we can get." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I'll be praying non-stop until you get back, all of you, including the girl." We left the house and headed to the stables, where we quickly saddled the horses. Sheriff Lima, who admitted he didn't have much experience riding, opted to use his pickup truck, taking an alternate route that eventually led to the creek. I mounted Windy, feeling a twinge of pain in my abdomen from the sudden movement, but I ignored it. Adrenaline was coursing through my veins, overriding any physical discomfort. Billy, Hank, and the others also mounted up, all with determined expressions. They were simple men, farmhands, not warriors. But in that moment, they were ready to fight, to risk their lives for Anna. "We'll take the main trail," I decided. "Fast, but quiet. We don't want them hearing us coming." Everyone nodded, and we set off into the dark night, guided only by the faint light of the waning moon. The sky was partly cloudy, which made visibility even worse, but we knew the way like the backs of our hands. As we rode, My mind was filled with thoughts about Anna. How she had been taken from our home, how scared she must be, what they might be doing to her at that very moment. Anger and fear mixed in my chest, creating a fierce determination that I had never felt before. "We're gonna save her," promised Billy, riding beside me as if he read my thoughts. "We're gonna bring the girl back, boss." I nodded, unable to speak due to the lump in my throat. I had to believe it. I had to believe that we would arrive in time, that Anna would be all right, that everything would end well. The alternative was unthinkable. As we approached the creek, we slowed down and increased our caution. The sound of running water could be heard in the distance, mixed with another sound that made my blood run cold, chanting. Male voices intoning something in a language I didn't recognize. We dismounted a safe distance away and tied the horses. Billy distributed flashlights to everyone, but instructed them to only turn them on if absolutely necessary. The moonlight, though faint, would have to suffice for now. We advanced on foot, moving silently among the trees and bushes. The chanting grew louder as we approached, and soon another sound joined it, crying, Anna's crying. My heart leaped. She was alive, scared, probably hurt, but alive. We reached the edge of the clearing where the creek formed a small pool. The scene that unfolded made my blood run cold. Anna was tied to a tree near the bank of the creek. She was wearing only a white nightgown, probably the same one she had gone to sleep in. Her face was streaked with tears, and there was a cut on her forehead, a trickle of blood running down the side of her face. Around her, 5 men dressed in dark robes formed a circle. One of them, who I recognized as Gabriel Mendez from the descriptions I had heard, was in the center, holding an old book and what appeared to be an ornate chalice. Black candles were arranged in a specific pattern around the circle, their flames flickering in the night breeze. The air was heavy with the smell of incense and something else, something metallic and unpleasant that I couldn't identify. "We need a plan," whispered Sheriff Lima, who had joined us, having come via another path with the pickup truck. "There's 5 of them, armed. We can't just charge in." He was right, of course. Despite the urgency of the situation, we needed to be strategic. One wrong move could cost Anna her life. "Billy, you and Hank take the right side," I instructed in a low voice. "The other 2, the left. Sheriff and I will go straight up the middle, directly for Anna." At my signal, everyone attacks at the same time. Priority is to free Anna, understood? Everyone nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation and the importance of following the plan. "When I count to 3, I said, readying my shotgun. 1, 2. Before I could say 3, something happened in the clearing. Gabriel raised the chalice above his head and began to speak loudly, in a language that sounded like a distorted mix of Latin and something older, darker. "The moment approaches, brothers," he exclaimed now in English. "The interferer will come, as foretold, and when his blood unites with that of the Chosen One, the portal will open, and he will come." The other men responded with a kind of ritualistic shout, raising their arms to the night sky. Gabriel approached Anna, the chalice in one hand, an ornate knife in the other. "Your blood first, Chosen One," he said, raising the knife. "Then, when he comes to save you, we will complete the circle." "Now!" I yelled, abandoning any pretense of surprise. There was no more time for that. I charged into the clearing, firing the shotgun into the air, the sound of the blast echoing in the night. Sheriff Lima was right behind me, his gun pointed at the men in the circle. Billy, Hank, and the others emerged from the sides, yelling and brandishing their own weapons. For a moment, there was total chaos. Gabriel's followers, taken by surprise, hesitated, some reaching for their weapons, others simply freezing in place. Gabriel, however, didn't hesitate. With a swift movement, he pulled Anna in front of him, the knife now pressed against her throat. "Stop right there, John!" he shouted, his face contorted in a mask of fury and religious exultation. "One more step, and she dies." I stopped immediately, the shotgun still pointed, but now useless. I couldn't risk a shot with Anna in the line of fire. "Let her go, Gabriel," I said, trying to keep my voice calm despite the terror I felt. "It's over. The police are on their way. There's no way out for you." He laughed, a high-pitched, almost hysterical sound. "Out? You don't understand, old man? I'm not looking for a way out. I'm looking for a way in, a portal to the other side, where he awaits." His eyes had a feverish, almost supernatural gleam in the candlelight. It was the look of someone who had crossed the thin line between devotion and madness a long time ago. "Gabriel," I tried again, taking a small step forward. "Whatever you believe, it's not worth the life of an innocent young woman. Let her go, and we'll talk, just you and me." His eyes narrowed, calculating. "That's exactly what I want, John. You and me, the interferer and the pathfinder, as it was written." I realized then that he truly believed every word he was saying. It wasn't just a scheme to manipulate vulnerable people, as I had initially thought. Gabriel genuinely believed he was performing some kind of cosmic ritual, opening a portal to some entity on the other side. "Then let the girl go," I suggested, keeping my voice calm, as if talking to a frightened child or a dangerous animal. "If it's me you want, here I am. Let her go, and do what you have to do." Anna let out a muffled whimper, her eyes wide with horror. "No, John," she managed to say despite the knife at her throat. "He'll kill you." "Silence!" Gabriel pressed the knife a little harder, making Anna flinch. A thin trickle of blood ran down her neck, where the blade had superficially cut the skin. The sight of that blood, Anna's blood, awakened something primal inside me. An anger I had never felt before, a visceral need to protect, to save. "Last chance, Gabriel," I said, my voice now laden with an implied threat. "Let her go, or I swear to God you won't leave here alive." He smiled, a smile that didn't reach his cold eyes. "Big words for a man in your position. But if you want to save her so badly, come here. Take her place." It was a trap, of course. But what choice did I have? I couldn't allow Anna to suffer anymore. I couldn't risk him deciding to hurt her seriously, or worse. "John, no." Sheriff Lima tried to stop me, grabbing my arm. "That's exactly what he wants." "I know," I replied, lowering the shotgun and handing it to him. "But I don't see any other way, not with that knife at her throat." Sheriff Lima looked like he wanted to argue more, but something in my expression must have convinced him of the futility of trying to dissuade me. "I'll distract him," he murmured. "When I give the signal, attack." I nodded imperceptibly, understanding the plan. It was risky, but better than simply surrendering without resistance. "I'm coming, Gabriel," I announced, taking a step forward, my hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "Let her go." Gabriel grinned, triumphant. "Come, interferer. Your place in the ritual awaits." I advanced slowly, each step calculated, keeping my eyes fixed on Gabriel's. I didn't look at Anna, although I could feel her desperate gaze on me. If I looked at her now, my resolve might fail. When I was only a few feet away, Sheriff Lima made his move. With a shout, he fired his gun to the side, hitting a nearby tree. The sound of the shot echoed through the clearing, startling everyone, including Gabriel. It was all I needed. In the brief moment that Gabriel's attention wavered, I lunged forward, colliding with him and Anna. The three of us fell to the ground in a tangle of limbs. The knife slipped from Gabriel's hand, sliding away on the damp earth. "Run, Anna!" I yelled as I struggled to immobilize Gabriel, who was thrashing furiously beneath me. Anna scrambled away, but she didn't flee. Instead, she grabbed the fallen knife and came back, her eyes filled with a fierce determination. "You're not going to hurt him," she said to Gabriel, the knife now in her hands, pointed at him. "You're never going to hurt anyone again." Around us, the chaos continued. Sheriff Lima and the farmhands were fighting with Gabriel's followers, who had finally reacted. Sounds of struggle, shouts, and occasional gunshots filled the night air. Gabriel, seeing the knife in Anna's hands, laughed again, that hysterical sound that seemed not to belong to a human being. "You don't understand, girl. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. He will come, with or without the ritual. He always comes." "Shut up," ordered Anna, her voice trembling with anger and fear. "Enough of your crazy talk." I kept Gabriel pinned down, although he continued to struggle. Adrenaline gave me strength I didn't know I had, overriding the pain of the not fully healed wound. "It's over, Gabriel," I said, pressing him against the ground with all my weight. "Your followers are being subdued. The police are on their way. Your ritual isn't going to happen." He stopped struggling suddenly, his body relaxing beneath mine. A strange smile formed on his lips. "The ritual has already begun, you old fool, the moment you stepped into this circle." Before I could understand what he meant, Gabriel snapped his head sharply upwards, colliding with my chin. Pain exploded in my jaw, and my grip on him loosened momentarily. It was all he needed. With surprising strength, he shoved me aside and rose in a fluid motion. Before Anna could react, he snatched the knife from her hands and pushed her away. "John!" she screamed, falling back on the ground. I tried to get up, but Gabriel was already over me, the knife raised. "Your blood interferer," he said, his eyes gleaming with madness. "Your blood will open the way." The knife came down in a swift arc. I rolled to the side, avoiding the blow by inches. The blade plunged into the earth, where my head had been a second before. Gabriel wrenched the knife from the ground and advanced again, relentless. I kept retreating, desperately searching for something to use as a weapon or shield. It was then that I heard it. Sirens, distant but approaching rapidly. Cardoso and the backup were arriving. Gabriel heard it too, his face contorted into a mask of fury and despair. "No!" he screamed at the sky. "I'm not finished yet. I need more time." I seized his momentary distraction to get to my feet. My body protested with pain, especially my abdomen, where the recent wound throbbed. But I ignored it all, focusing only on surviving, on protecting Anna. "It's too late, Gabriel," I said, assuming a defensive stance. "The police are here. Your followers are surrendering or fleeing. It's over." He looked around, confirming the truth of my words. His men were all immobilized or unconscious, subdued by Sheriff Lima, Billy, and the others. The sirens were getting closer and closer. For a moment, I thought he would surrender. That reality would finally penetrate the fog of madness that enveloped his mind. I was wrong. With a scream that seemed to contain all the rage and frustration in the world, Gabriel lunged at me again, the knife aimed at my heart. "If I can't open the portal," he roared, "at least I'll take you with me, interferer." I didn't have time to dodge. The knife was about to hit me when a blur launched itself between us. Anna. The blade plunged into her shoulder with a sickening thud, drawing a cry of pain from her. But even wounded, she didn't back down. Instead, she grabbed Gabriel's arm with both hands, immobilizing him. "Now, John!" she yelled, struggling to keep Gabriel still despite the pain. I didn't hesitate. With all the strength I could muster, I threw a straight punch into Gabriel's face. I heard the crack of breaking bones, his nose, my knuckles, maybe both. He staggered backward, the knife still embedded in Anna's shoulder. Before he could recover, I attacked again, this time hitting him in the solar plexus. The air escaped his lungs in a hiss, and he fell to his knees. I grabbed him by his robe, lifting his face to mine. "This is for Anna," I said, my voice low and dangerous, "and for all the others you hurt." My fist collided with his face again, and this time he collapsed completely, unconscious. I turned immediately to Anna, who had sat down on the ground, her hand pressed around the knife still sticking out of her shoulder. Her face was pale, contorted in pain, but her eyes were clear and focused. "Don't pull the knife out," I instructed, kneeling beside her. "It could make the bleeding worse." She nodded, biting her lip to keep from screaming. I took off my shirt and tore it into strips, improvising a bandage around the blade to stabilize it and contain the bleeding. "Why did you do that?" I asked, my voice choked with emotion. Why did you put yourself in front of the knife? Her eyes met mine, a fierce determination shining through the pain. For the same reason you came to rescue me, she replied. During the interrogations, several members of the cult mentioned something that we initially didn't take too seriously. They spoke of a contingency plan if something went wrong with the main ritual. Sheriff Cardoso paused, as if searching for the right words. They said Augustus had prepared an alternate ritual if they lost the primary chosen one. Anna paled beside me. I was that primary chosen one. Yes, confirmed Ribeiro, speaking for the first time. His voice was grave, almost professorial. But what worries us isn't the past, but what they plan to do next. And what would that be? I asked, feeling a growing unease. According to several consistent testimonies, Augustus believed that if the main ritual failed, they could perform an alternate ritual, less powerful according to him, but still effective for what they called the Great Awakening. Ribeiro looked directly at Anna. For that ritual, they would need the blood of the person who interfered with the fate of the chosen one. A heavy silence fell over the room as we absorbed the meaning of those words. John, murmured Anna, turning to me with wide, frightened eyes, they're going to come after you. Not necessarily, Sheriff Cardoso interjected quickly. Augustus is dead, and most of the cult's most fanatical members are in jail. Those who remain at large are mostly low-level followers, not leaders. But some remain on the loose, I insisted, picking up on what he wasn't saying explicitly. Sheriff Cardoso nodded reluctantly. 3 important members of Augustus's inner circle have not been found in the raids. The sun was slowly descending on the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink that only a sunset in the heartland can create. Sitting in the old rocking chair on the porch of the main house, I watched the activity in the farmyard with a smile on my face. My 80 years no longer allow me to roam the property on horseback as I used to, but the view from here is more than enough to warm my heart. Clearwaters isn't just a farm anymore. It's become a small rural empire, a landmark throughout the region. Jose, my firstborn, now 35, manages the business side with the same mathematical precision he's displayed since he was a child. With a degree in agricultural engineering, he's implemented technologies that I never would have thought possible. Automated irrigation systems, drone monitoring, real-time soil analysis. Maria, at 33, has turned her passion for nature into a brilliant career. After graduating in biology, specializing in botany, she established a nursery of native heartland species on the farm that supplies seedlings for reforestation projects throughout the Midwest. Her name appears in international scientific publications, and her preservation work is recognized even in government circles. And Louisa, our youngest, now 25, followed in her mother's footsteps in agronomy, but with a special focus on family farming and rural community development. She founded a co-op that brings together small producers in the region, teaching sustainable techniques and ensuring access to more profitable markets. 3 children, 3 different paths, all rooted in the same soil, in the same passion for the land that Anna and I have shared for so many years. Speaking of her, Inna appears at the porch door, a steaming mug of tea in each hand. At 60, her hair now shows silver strands among the black, and small wrinkles mark the corners of her eyes. But to me, she's more beautiful than ever, like an oak tree that, as it ages, only reveals more clearly the strength and elegance of its branches. Lemon balm tea, she announces, handing me one of the mugs before sitting in the chair next to me. Granny Z said it helps calm the heart for all the excitement today. I smile at the mention of the old cook. Granny Z, now almost 100, has surprised everyone by remaining alive and lucid, though confined to a wheelchair in the small house we built, especially for her, near the main house. She continues to give orders in the kitchen, supervising the new generation of employees with the same vigor as always. As if my heart needed calming, I joke, sipping a bit of the aromatic tea. I've seen 3 weddings on this farm. A 4th won't shake me. Anna smiles, that smile that even after 35 years of living together still makes my heart skip a beat. This one's different, she argues softly. It's our granddaughter, the first of the new generation to get married here. She's right, of course. Clara, Jose's eldest daughter, has chosen to hold her wedding on the farm, maintaining a family tradition that began with our own wedding so many years ago. Seeing my 22-year-old granddaughter paving her own way, building her own story, brings a sense of continuity that is hard to express in words. Look there, Anna points to the large barn that has been transformed into a banquet hall. Jose is checking the sound system for the 10th time at least. I laugh, recognizing my son's perfectionism. Maria is in the garden, making sure every flower is in the exact right place, I add, spotting my middle daughter among the floral arrangements she herself cultivated. And Luisa is with Clara, probably giving her the 1,000th piece of marriage advice. As if she had so much experience, Anna comments, laughing. Luisa, always independent, has opted for a stable but legally unformalized relationship with her partner Peter, a biologist she met during her studies. We fall silent for a moment, just watching the activity, the comings and goings of the preparations, the lively voices that fill the farm air. A deep peace washes over me, the certainty that, no matter what happens from here on out, we'll leave a legacy that goes far beyond land, buildings, or material wealth. Have you ever thought, I begin, my voice softer, almost reflective, that if I hadn't stopped on that road 35 years ago, none of this would exist? Not our children, not our grandchildren, not everything we've built together. Anna takes my wrinkled hand in hers, her eyes meeting mine with the same intensity as always. Sometimes, she admits, but then I think that it couldn't have been any other way. That there was something bigger guiding us, bringing us together, even in the most improbable circumstances. Destiny, I murmur, remembering a similar conversation we had at the beginning of our journey together. Or simply the recognition of 2 souls that belong to each other, she suggests. Like 2 heartland plants that grow side by side, their roots intertwining so deeply that they become inseparable. The metaphor touches me deeply, as always happens when Anna speaks, using the language of the land, of the plants, of the nature she loves so much. Our thoughts are interrupted by the arrival of Clara, radiant in her simple wedding dress, without the excesses of current fashion, but with a timeless elegance that recalls the women of our family. Grandpa, Grandma, she calls, approaching with open arms. Are you hiding out here while everyone else is working? Privilege of age, my dear, I respond, opening my arms to receive her. Besides, we're supervising from a distance. She laughs, a sound that reminds me so much of Maria at the same age. I came to ask you for something special, she says, sitting on the porch step at our feet as she used to do when she was a child. I wanted you two to tell me the story of how you met, how it all began. I exchange a look with Anna. It's a story we've told many times over the years, adapting the details according to the age of the listeners, omitting the darker aspects when the children were young, being more honest as they grew and could understand the complexities of life. Now, I ask, looking at the ongoing preparations, shouldn't you be getting ready or checking the last details? Clara waves her hand dismissively, so much like Anna that I almost laugh. I have time, and I need this, Grandpa. I need to remember where we came from, the strength that brought us here, before taking the next step on my own journey. How could I deny a request like that? Anna squeezes my hand, indicating that I should start, as I always do. Well, I begin, my voice naturally assuming the storytelling tone I've perfected over decades of narratives for children and grandchildren. It was a hot afternoon, 35 years ago. I was returning to the farm after checking the fences on the northern edge of the property. The story flows as always, the words familiar, the crucial moments of that incredible journey that brought us here. Anna occasionally adds details, corrects some imprecise memory, shares her perspective. Clara listens with rapt attention, even though she already knows the story by heart. When we reach the end, not the true end, which is still being written every day, but the point where we usually pause the narrative, Clara has tears in her eyes. "It's even more powerful to hear this today," she says, wiping away a tear. "Knowing that I'm going to start my own love story, my own family. And you'll have your own version to tell," adds Anna, leaning over to caress our granddaughter's face. "Unique, special, completely yours, but always connected to the roots we planted here." Clara nods, understanding the depth of what Anna is saying. Then she gets up, gently adjusting her dress. "I need to finish getting ready," she announces. "But thank you for everything, for the story, for the example, for the love that created all of this." She makes a sweeping gesture, indicating not only the wedding preparations, but the entire farm, the entire life that flourishes around us. After she walks away, Anna and I fall silent again, each lost in our own thoughts and memories. The sun is almost setting now, the sky a spectacle of colors that seem to celebrate this special moment with us. "We told the sanitized version," comments Anna after a while. "Without the sons of the earth, without Gabriel Mendez, without all the dangers we faced." "She knows the full version," I reply. "She just didn't need to hear it today, on her wedding day." Anna agrees with a slight nod. "Our children and grandchildren know the true story, with all its scary and dramatic elements. It's part of our legacy, of our family truth, but they also know that it's not what defines our journey." "You know what impresses me the most?" Anna asks, her eyes scanning the property that stretches out before us. "How we transformed something that started with so much fear, so much pain, into something so full of life, of joy, of possibilities. Like the heartland itself," I respond, using her favorite metaphor. "That seems dead and dry after months of drought, but that explodes into life with the first rains. That keeps in its deep roots all the strength necessary to be reborn, no matter how adverse the conditions." She smiles, squeezing my hand. "Exactly. We transform dry land into fertile soil, pain into healing, loneliness into connection, survival into fullness. And not just for us," I add, thinking of all those who have been touched by our journey over the years. "For our children, our grandchildren, for all who work here, for the communities that Luisa helps, for the areas that Maria reforests." Anna nods, her eyes shining with the quiet pride of someone who knows they've made a difference in the world, that they've left something better than they found it. "Do you regret anything?" she asks suddenly, turning to look directly at me. The question takes me by surprise. In 35 years together, we've been through so much. Joys, sorrows, challenges, triumphs. We've made mistakes, of course, like any couple, any family. We've had our moments of doubt, of weariness, of frustration. But regret? Not for a second, I reply with absolute sincerity. Every moment, every choice, every challenge has brought us here. How could I regret something that resulted in all this? I make a broad gesture, encompassing not only the physical farm, but everything it represents. Our family, our legacy, the love we've built and nurtured for over 3 decades. Anna smiles, that smile that illuminates everything around her, that has always been my light in the darkest moments. "Me neither," she says simply. "Not for a second." The bell of the farm chapel begins to ring, announcing that it's time for the ceremony. Slowly, leaning on my cane, I get up from the rocking chair. Anna does the same, still spry despite her age. "Time to see our granddaughter get married," she says, adjusting the light blue dress she chose for the occasion. "And to start a new chapter in the Severino family story," I add, offering her my arm. Side by side, as we have been for so many years, we walk toward the chapel, where the whole family must already be gathered. The path is short, but each step carries the weight and the beauty of the entire journey we have traveled together. Around us, Clearwater's farm pulsates with life and possibilities. The heartland, resilient as always, flourishes in all its exuberance at this time of year, and our roots, intertwined deeply in this red soil that we love so much, continue to nourish new generations, new dreams, new stories that are yet to be told. Like the very land that we have learned to love and respect, our story doesn't really have an end. It just transforms, renews itself, finds new ways to flourish, even long after we're gone. And that, I realize as we walk beneath the starry sky that begins to reveal itself, is the greatest gift of all. The certainty that the love we planted will continue to grow, to spread, to create new gardens in places we may never know. It's more than enough. It's everything.